Hey, what's up, you guys? How's it going? Just doing a quick stream here. Thanks for joining in. We'll get started in just a moment in terms of actually drawing. Just wanted to set this up in terms of making sure everything is working properly. So hang tight as you guys are going to be sitting for a little bit, maybe asking some questions. But we'll also wait as people kind of jump in here as we go through the day. So let me just set everything up. Get my chat window in place as well. Okay. Once people get in here, I'll get a sense if video audio is working fairly well. We'll be sketching a little bit now, obviously, today. I haven't done a Twitch stream in a minute, so it's nice to have people in here checking things out right now. But we're just gonna be loosely drawing, sketching, just on my own time. I have my own sketchbook. It's the usual sketchbook that I carry around with me. This leather-bound one I've been keeping with me for a couple months now, and about only a quarter way through. It's actually a dense amount of pages. It's just that the amount of pages in in this is really tightly packed together, so it's a bit deceptive. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of pages, but really, if you go through it, it's a lot of individual sheets. So I've only been able to chew through about that much, which is actually already quite a bit of drawings. So obviously, I'm going to keep adding to this book, sketch for you guys a little bit here, and to be able to just chat, talk, and speak with you guys in a moment. But of course, questions and anything are welcome. Let me just reshift my keyboard. Give myself a bit more room. Just give you a quick tour in terms of what this sketchbook actually carries, which I'm sure I've shown before in the past. I carry normally with me about a couple of sketchbooks, and this is one that makes a rotation. On top of this one is my journal book, the fantasy one, the natural history book style one, which I need to work on more too. But this one's getting there. It's gonna take a minute, probably this whole year, to really starting to kind of make a big dent in this piece, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, let's get to the page that I want to work on. And I'm going to be doing basically a fantasy piece in relation to me just starting off playing the new game, the Elden Ring stuff. So I thought, oh, that'd be kind of nice inspiration because I've already been playing quite a bit of it. My mind and brain is fixated on that kind of world and fantasy now, so I figured I'll kind of get that out of my system. But welcome everyone for those of you joining in. So just a few people at the moment, which I expected to be the case because I haven't been on Twitch in a while. So expected to be a small group, which is great. And I welcome those that can just hang out and sketch with me. So if you guys have sketchbooks, paper, whatever the case is, and you got time, if you're doing something else, you can, of course. But please hang out and let's draw. So I'm gonna go straight right off. I'm trying to plan out exactly what I want in the piece. I haven't really thought about anything that I want. None of this stuff is planned out just at all. What I will do is obviously go through a couple thoughts as to like what I want to go with this. I do want to do a character, obviously. I want to incorporate some sort of creature within it. I'll probably have him face actually to the right because I always do a character facing to the left. So I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and work within that. Ryu, you're saying you have my book, The Dynamic Bible. Oh, nice with the recommendation from Ron. Ron's a great guy. Performance drawings like what Tarada and Kim Jong-gi do as well too. Yeah, you draw all dexterity exercise with brush pen. Diversify the brush pen though. The brush pen is something that's going to be great to obviously build an affinity to and understanding of. But the more you diversify your tool sets, the more of a sense of tactile feeling you'll get from the paper and the pen itself. That word is difficult sometimes, but again, brush pen requires a very sensitive touch, which is difficult to build in the beginning aspect of it. So using other kind of tools like felt tip pens, or either other kind of like felt tip brush pens, like this one here is a Tombow. The Tombow is a pretty good starting tool in terms of just having it as a kind of a brush tip, but also does have a nice rigid tip on the other end of it. I haven't opened this one just yet, so let's see if I can pop it open. It's like stuck in there. Don't have my knife on me. Sorry. Either way, that one, but also the let's see, other kind of felt tip pens that I would recommend. The typical kind of microns and Stedlers, even things like high-tech pens, possibly, like felt tip brush pens, Fude style pens. These are the kind of tools I like to also diversify with, just because it deepens your sensitivity on working with analog tools. So I would very much, play around as much as possible. Building muscle memory with a brush pen, of course, in its own world will work, but it's hard to translate over to other tool sets. So you want to diversify again, like I said, as much as you can. All right. The tools I'm using today are going to be more of fountain pens. So I have different types of fountain pens I like to play with. This one is the Pilot Custom, a very flexible nib, custom shaped. These two are Estabrooks. This one is an Akaya, a Japanese one. So did I make the sketchbook? No, I did not. I bought it at I don't even know what kind of store you would call it. Kind of a crafts store, I guess. Really anything else. The paper is supposed to be handmade. This is just a leather bound like this. And it closes shut with a little button. It smells a little bit from the leather. No, it's not the leather, it's the paper actually. The paper has a bit of a smell to it. It smells like when paper, like cardboard, like cardboard. That's what it smells like. The paper itself is a little bit rough and fibrous, so it's not the most ideal when it comes to fountain pens, but it's not terrible either. Okay, so I was saying I was going to do like a fantasy character. Let's have him on top of a creature down here. The character will be sitting up here, and I'll have him like holding some kind of blade planted into the head of the animal down this way. So what I like to do a lot of times before I start sketching and drawing is to just kind of talk things out. A lot of times I'll do it in my own mind, of course, but on live streams I'll kind of talk it out with you guys, just to kind of inform you more about what I'm actually doing. So the character will go here. So I'm trying to figure out scale. Scale is really the big thing about the sketching and drawing that's so difficult. Scaling within proportion, scaling within the actual size of the drawing so you position it properly. Scaling within the context of environment and landscapes where you have multiple objects within the space, because if scale is off a little bit, it throws off the entire image. So scaling actually becomes a really big important part of drawing daily. So what I want to make sure is the size of the drawing is proper. Now, of course, people can try to build the torso and build the forms. All I need is really just a single shape, and that single shape dictates one context to, let's say, the figure, which can help me control every aspect of it. Now, this is because of time and practice and a lot of a repetition to get to that point. So because I know the weapon is going to be overlapped, it's going to come down this direction like a sword. Imagine the pen, the sword, going down this way. So his hand's going to be up here, which is going to go back this direction, means the shoulder is going to be down in that area as well too, because I want the arm above the shoulder. So that gives me a visualization as to like where things are. So this would be the sword, arm placement, hand, shoulders. So that means if I put the hand right about there, I'm probably going to be in a relatively safe spot. So let's do that. And what I'm going to do is actually put his... At first, I was going to do like a closed fist kind of thing like that. I'm going to have him go on top of the pommel of the sword like that instead, because it's easier to draw. So planning out... let me make sure the pen's working, by the way. Let's do a quick tester. I got to make sure the tools are working properly. It's a scrap piece of paper. Okay, that one's good. A Pilot, a little bit heavier. It's good. Let's make sure one of the Esterbrook's are okay. That's okay. Once you get going a little bit, then it starts to flow. With fountain pens, kind of have to wake it up a little bit. So if it's been sitting there for a little bit, kind of falls asleep as an analogy. So you have to kind of kick it a little bit to get going. Okay, so let's start up that hand again. It's about here. And I'll start the drawing initially with kind of some constructive elements, some base shapes. I'm not going to construct as I normally would in my like dynamic sketching classes. I don't normally do that heavily within my own work. I will obviously incorporate it. It's adapted very in a way that not necessarily minuscule or minimal, but in a method of adaptation where I can actually incorporate that constructive piece where it's much more informative to me, but it may not maybe elusive to you guys. You can't necessarily see exactly what's going on, in terms of what's actually being put in there for construction. So I know in terms of what's happening, of course, obviously, but in the sense that when I put down construction lines, I'm able to interpret what those marks mean more than just about the visual, connection to, let's say, drawing an arm or drawing a head. So I'm going to have the weapon come down this direction. Some kind of fantasy weapon. So this is not going to be the most practical looking thing, which is fine. And I could have just drawn the sword flat, but I'm going to put it at a slight angle with the cross guard coming up this direction. And I think I might play, again, like I said, with the fantasy elements of things a little bit. So those lines right there are constructive lines. Now that I've established that, what I'm going to do is zoom in a little bit. So that way you can see a bit closer to the strokes and the lines as to what they're being produced. So Rio's asking, a question, does sculpting help with the drawing skills? I would agree with what Mark Turfray is saying, mainly because it does also, like he's mentioning, things like helping you learn anatomy, especially if you are sculpting anatomy, and that side of proportion. Now, proportion is really a connection to visual, to the action of things, right? So we're not actually using physical tools in a drawing as you're looking at a model of a person, interpreting the anatomy or the proportions. What I mean by this is that if you have a figure person in front of you and you're trying to draw them, right? You don't walk up to them with a measuring tool to actually get like a measurement of the length of the torso or the arm and bring it back down to your sketchbook to get a measurement of that. It's all about eye. So you look at it and you then interpret it down to the page. So you have to scale it downwards onto the page. So that requires, again, like I said, a lot of practice on hand-eye coordination and being able to interpret and visualize from what you see above you down to the page. Sculpting would be no different, except it's a physical medium, but that combination of eyeing things will translate from physical to the 2D analog, right? So, or 2D digital, whatever case you want to go with. So yes, I think, in my opinion, also sculpting would be tremendously helpful. Have I sculpted in the past myself? To a degree, playing around with it, nothing to be an actual process or implemented to things that I do in my day-to-day work. I just find it more enjoyable and therapeutic, if anything else. I mean, I have demoed uses of digital sculpture into my 2D work in classes and stuff like that. So by using things like Nomad Sculpt, what Terada uses as well too, I've used myself. I've played with things like ZBrush. I need to play a lot more with Blender, which I haven't really cracked open yet. So these small little marks of lines are quite important for me to understand. Again, like I said, constructive elements of center lines, consistency of angle, all those things. Placing marks down, like down to here, give me a sense of where the blade will end. This is where the creature's head will be, down here. How the creature's head's going to position, and what I want to draw. I thought about some kind of dragon, but I might make it some kind of grotesque humanoid-looking thing. So its head's going to face this direction. So these lines, again, are constructive. It may represent certain parts of the anatomy on the head. I don't know just yet, so I have no idea what I'm going to draw here. But we'll see. So that gives me, again, like I said, context of placement, scale, positioning, all those things. So let's continue down and finish out the sword, because I'm starting now from the top to the back. So I'm layering it as I go. Layer, layer, layer. Top layer to the bottom layer. So most people like to start with the core of, like, let's say, the character, right? Head, torso, all those things. You go to the arm. What happens, of course, a lot of times is, as you're trying to draw that, you can't predict where things are overlapping on top of each other. So you draw one aspect of it, not realizing I have to put a sword right there, and you're too late. If you draw with a pen, it's obviously impossible to retract that. This is why most people like to do underlay pencil, right? So they pencil it, and they kind of erase things out afterwards, right? So, but here, so why do I use pen in the first place? I just find it more entertaining. It's also a key thing to be more confident in your line work, and to be very, not specific, but definitely mindful about your awareness of your drawings, making decisions. So you choose to do certain things. That intention builds even a stronger sense of confidence. So that's a really big component as to why I like to start with straight pen. Now, if you draw with pencils and stuff like that, it's not a bad thing. You're more than welcome to do this. Of course, in my classes, I refrain from people doing that because the class requires you to make mistakes to build the confidence of things. You can't do that with pencil. But on your own time, you guys can draw whatever you want to do with. So even right now, if you're drawing some kind of character or having fun and sketching and drawing loosely, don't be concerned about, like, oh, I got to draw in pen also. Not necessarily. So now we got generally the weapon in place. Let's finish out the arm guard here. I'm going to have his armor shape language to be a bit more blockish and angular. So squares and triangles I'll be using quite a bit. Have I ever played around with the Pilot Parallel pen? I have, quite a bit actually. I used it quite a bit when I was a student. This is years and years ago. The Pilot Parallel pen is more of a chisel tip, so it's really good for calligraphy and stuff like that. But I like to use that pen with the corner and the edge, so you can actually get some nice lines. But I didn't stick with it for long. I just find other pens to be a bit more versatile. Not only versatile, but I don't know. Just the tool itself is alright. It's just not the best thing ever. At the end of it, I can only use a corner of a chisel tip for so long, basically. So you either only have that line or that really broad, thick chisel tip line. This is why I favor fountain pens a bit more, because with the fountain pen, I can get really thin, but I can press a little bit harder and get some nice line variation. So the arm is going to go up this direction. Let's put the shoulder lower here. I'm going to keep a track, an eye on the feed here, see who's actually in and who's watching. Keeping track of the numbers. Let me turn down my phone also. Okay, this is a shoulder piece. I'm going to wrap around this direction. Let's bring it down a little bit. Just watching the screen. And he's going to be slouching over. And this would be basically a fabric material on the front. Fantasy, so we can just make it up. It can be based off of armor sets from different periods of time, different cultures. So I might mix stuff together. Hey, what's up, Kenny? Good, man. Hope you're doing well. Long time no talk. I haven't done a Twitch stream in probably months. The classes got pretty heavily loaded this time around. My online classes are going to be starting up again this coming May 16th. And registration actually is this week. So this term, the classes were quite strong. People worked really, really hard. So I had a lot of work ahead of me in terms of getting feedback in place. So it's quite labor intensive. And because of that, every time I finished classes, I just didn't have the energy to do some of the stream work. So as much as I wanted to try to keep that up as much as I could, but I just could not get it going. It was just that this term was just really intensive. I want to switch this pen up a little bit. I don't mind the thinness to it, but I'm finding it to be just slightly scratchy on the paper. So I'm going to switch it over to the Pilot pen, see how this one works. Gonna get a paper towel. Wipe off any excess ink. Okay. My inkwell? What do you mean? Goblet welding. Are you talking about the actual bottle of ink that I use for this? Because I'm using a fountain pen, so this is all internal. The converter. The pen ink I'm using right now, though, it is this one here, the Sailor pigment-based ink. This is what I use currently inside these pens. So, question I got right now is, will I be doing any dynamic sketching courses in June to July? I do have a schedule written down. I was doing a calendar schedule work today. And I think I have it down in here. Let's see if I have it in June or July. So session 3 will go from, so this coming term right now is from May 16th and we end July 11th. So the session 3 will start August 8th and end October 31st. So yeah, if you want to look for a June and July, right now this coming term is the one you would jump in on, because we end around July. Pigment based, yes, pigment based ink. Let me just get a bit more information in place here before we continue asking or answering questions, because I want to make sure we have enough of the drawing in place before we do so. So right now I'm just kind of placing in where the head will be. I haven't done any of the features just yet. I'm going to switch pens back and forth here. And this paper is a little bit, it bites because it's really fibrous. When I say it bites, it means like it kind of snags. So the nib of the pen will hit some of the fibers and kind of catch it. So I guess it's really the pen that bites, not the paper. But let's do some slight Under Armour kind of visuals. And I'll answer some questions. Anyways, I hope everyone else is also having a relative good week, month. It's already April. What is it now? April 6th. So the month of March went by frighteningly fast. So I said shape language wise for the characters armor sets, I'm going to go with the squarish to sharp angular. I'm going to have his other arm come forward this direction. We'll come to his face last. Question from Huru is, you think you're not confident enough because I still lack knowledge and I feel like I don't know when do I need to be or when you need to be confident using only pen and just draw loosely. Um, you continue. Do you think lack of fundamental knowledge makes people less confident? Is it better to just draw things as it is? Well, that's a preference of your own. You know, you can choose to draw things as they are from what you see because you prefer that, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, because some people can be more representation type artists, right? They look at things in terms of observation of models and still life, and they like to do portraiture or paintings based on that observation. Some people like to, you know, obviously use your imagination, come up with things. And what you choose in terms of, you know, what direction you go for that, I mean, of course, it comes from your personal interest of things, whether you grew up with stuff that was much more entertainment based, or, you know, whether it's supposed to be something that's realistic. So that's your choice. But, you know, does a lack of fundamental knowledge, does it make people less confident? I think it can, because without having any sort of guidance, there's a lot of doubt. You don't really have a question or answer to some questions you might have as to like how do you solve certain issues visually, right? So because you're not really quite sure, because you have no one there to maybe encourage or support the explorations of things in your education or within your you know, skill sets, you're always going to have somewhat of a self doubt as to what to do with it, right? So confidence, of course, I would say it could be hit. That's what I'm saying. But I think I've seen it from a lot of people also. You know, people who didn't necessarily go to like colleges, formal education types, even though they can be just as good and they can make it in the industry. I do also find that they also lack a sense of self confidence in certain things. But they have other strengths for sure. You know, adaptability. Um, you know, being able to make quick decisions because of the fact that they're the ones there to make all the decisions themselves. But still, when they look at their own work, I get a lot of like I hear a lot of comments of things like, you know, oh, you're better than me, or I wish I was this and this and this, or I feel like I don't know that part. So there's a lot of doubt, even though they can be good, you know, even though they have all those things. It's just that they can't see it per se. It was like to downplay their skills. Let's put his leg here. It's inspired by it. The whole Elden Ring stuff I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the stream is I've been playing the game like crazy. So of course, in my brain, that's all that stuff was permeated with the visuals of all the fantasy stuff, you know. So I can't help but wanting to expunge it out of my system. Great ways on being able to warm up or start your creative, let's say, studying processes on your own. You can just go into homework if you want to, right? And that's always kind of boring. It's like just starting to draw, to do homework and exercises. It's not very easy to kind of jump into. So drawing things that you like, or drawing things you've seen, or drawing things that you're influenced by in that moment in time is a great way just to get beginning that role of exercising in your sketches and skill sets. So once you kind of get that ball rolling, then you can start to move into actual training or things you got to work on for, let's say, homework if you're a student. So for me, I like to still do this mainly because it's a great way for me to continue to train and to practice. And even though it's not really going to be for anything, I'm not selling this. I'm not doing it for anybody else. Um, it's a great way for me to keep it up. Do you think you can work towards having fun with art, or is it something you either have to have or don't have? Well, I had fun with it all the time. So that's what we're kind of talking about right now. So the idea is that this thing I'm drawing, inspired by the world from the game I'm playing, um, it isn't really for work. I'm not selling it. It's not for anybody else except for me. So of course, I'm only gonna have fun, right? Um, but at the same time, can I use these skills and apply it to, let's say, an actual client job or professional gig? Of course, absolutely. So when that time is there for me to actually work on those things, I will. But I'm also going to spend a lot of time making sure I can have a lot of fun with the things I can do. The key thing about this is that in terms of what I talk about a lot of my classes is that you guys feel quite guilty when you do. When you do things like play with sketching and drawing, or play with creativity, you feel guilty that you're not working towards the homework or skill based thing that's going to elevate your quality, quote unquote, right? So you feel guilty of it and you stop doing it because you think to yourself, I got to sit and work instead of play with sketching. Like, for instance, oh, I shouldn't be allowed to just draw characters that I like. Why not? I mean, if that's the only thing you're doing, we're talking about balance here, right? So doing one of anything too much of is not really going to help you grow. But the idea is to be able to be diversifying your experiences, as we talked about diversity in tool sets, but also diversity within your creativity and the way you can explore things. It's only help build many more visual things you can actually explore on. When drawing a face, what do I draw first? The brow. Chaos. The brow is the first thing I like to go for. Pow Pow's that saying, comparisons can be dangerous in the world of artists. We just got to keep doing the best we can. Yeah, and comparison, it can be dangerous because what you yourself tell yourself, basically, um, because no one's, I mean, of course, there could be people out there criticizing you and telling you certain things, and that can be hard to listen to, but it's really your own brain telling yourself that maybe you're not good enough, or why you can't do that, right? Why aren't you as popular? Why aren't you doing this? That kind of stuff. So why aren't you successful? I guess um, we tell ourselves all these things, and we tend to defeat ourselves more than others defeating us. So can you try to talk us through your decisions as you draw? Like tell us why you are drawing a certain line and how you know what to do next. Yeah. So in the very beginning, I talked a lot about the layering process of the sketch and drawing right now. So the idea was that I have a character kneeling or crouching or sitting on something, so that's going to come this way and that way. But I had to find the position of the drawing, the scale, the sizing, but also the overlapping elements of things. So the overlaps, of course, I started with the top layer. I knew the sword was going to come down this direction. I kind of planted that with the use of my pen. I'm saying the sword's going to come down this way. It means the hand could be right here. So I started with certain shapes that encompass the overall silhouette. Think about the contour, the outer silhouette. Then I work internally to build volume, right? So think of a shape. Then I increase volume by adding things like lines that create the rotation and turn of a form. So the armor set has segmentation lines, because it's a layered piece of armor. As the layer armors and it wraps around the form of the human being, it creates these lines across contour. So it wraps around the arm, it wraps around the shoulders, it wraps around the hips and the legs and the thighs. And so those lines visually communicate the sense of three dimensions. So this is not perspective. We're talking about three-dimensional form. Perspective is not being used here at all right now. Okay? What is perspective? Perspective is the illusion of depth and space, right? So you can create three-dimensional forms and not necessarily have to consider perspective. You can draw forms without perspective, right? Isometric forms are forms, three-dimensional. Top, side, front can be seen, planes, but then also the fact that we're not using perspective on them. So here, this is a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional plane, right? So it's a character of a form. So using elements of the visual information about clothing, about the overlaps, about the scale, gives it a sense of three dimensions. So here, the first step is trying to figure out, well, what's on top and what's below. So I thought about the sword, then the arm, then the shoulder, then the torso, then I went to the head, and I continued working downwards. So your viewpoint, yeah, is a perspective, of course, and that's opinion also too. But we're talking about visual perspective. So let's have his other leg come this direction. I'm going to draw shapes. Abstracted, armor shapes. It doesn't have to be super consistent. I just want to give myself visual information and data that I can use. And he's going to be like sitting on top of the thing. Some kind of weird creature, monster. This thing will be some kind of weird, grotesque, humanoid type of thing. I'll put another head up here. Growing multiple heads out of it. So I have been playing Elden Ring. So I'm going to use that as information to build a poem to. So think about some of the creatures that I saw. Is there an age limit on my classes? No, but some of the information, like I said, can be hard to absorb. So my recommendation is someone, I would say coming into high school is probably pretty strong. I've had younger people come in before, and I've seen many young kids be able to draw at a very high level, but it's not very general. It's very few and far in between. But I would say once you get to the more mature age of, 16, 17, 18, around that point in time, you really have to commit to it because you see it as a valid educational path. Where in the beginning, or I would say even before that, it's definitely more of a sense of trying to have fun with it. It's a kind of a play thing in a way. But like I said, I've seen some kids take it very seriously. So, but there wouldn't be an age limit for me. If there was someone very young, it would be probably wise and ideal that they reach out to me, of course. Talk to me and ask me questions, that kind of stuff, and whatnot. So emailing me, it's probably the best, just to see, if some of the content I'll be covering is something that they will be interested in, of course. And older, so the other side, no, there is no age limit. I've had some students from the last session that were in their 50s and 60s. So it doesn't matter when you start. The important thing is that you do start. I wouldn't agree with that, McCormick. He's saying that if you're over 60, you cannot have an art education. I don't agree. I've had people that come from all walks of life, from different educational backgrounds, having different careers, starting an art direction and making it successful for themselves. Now, what level of success that is, it's up to them, right? Now, is it difficult? Oh, absolutely. Because your time is limited and you have a certain disadvantage to people that are starting younger. There's really only one key thing as a disadvantage. The disadvantage is, of course, the time spent on being able to be familiar with the tools, with the muscle memory, the muscle memory is a big aspect of it. But when you start a bit older, you have to make up all that time to control the tool set. So you can still learn the techniques and the methods. You can be very smart about what you actually absorb information wise. So you can still use it and you can still be quite good. It's just that there is an aspect of catch up on the muscle memory aspect, which physically you haven't walked yet. So when you're trying to run, it's not going to be very fun, you know? So I would say people of any age are welcome. Uh, well past their 30s, you know, I'm 40 now. But again, I had students that were in the 50s and 60s, and they had the same type of anxieties and concerns as young people would because it's something of a territory that's new. Anything you approach new for the first time, it's going to be unfamiliar, scary, and hard, and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yes, there are societal kind of like things because oh, you're older, you're not valid anymore. Then of course you can't do it. But I certainly wouldn't agree with that. So we have a question here, which is I would like to ask about my opinion on using references to create an artwork piece. There's always a debate among artists if using, I don't know about the debate. I don't know where you're hearing that, but among artists, if using reference should be heavily used or someone should depend on their own creativity imagination. Again, I'd be curious as to like where you're getting that debate of information at all. Is it social media? Because you should not be listening to social media for that kind of stuff, honestly. Now you might think, well, that's the only source of information. Well, it's not very good information, you know. Uh, Treat social media again as only places of opinion. Nothing there is actual, you know, educational sources. Uh, of course, when you listen to people that might have decades of experience, but still, like for me, this is just my opinion. I'm not telling you that this is really, you know, factual in any way. But the more you hear individual people, you start to get an average sense of what they maybe will say about it. But social media tends to have such a large gamut of individuals, inexperienced people, very experienced people, and sometimes you don't even know, right? And so they can just say stuff, and you have no sense of context of where they come from. So because of that, there's no validity towards social media on that side, especially when what we're talking about, the side of using reference or not. So if we're talking about using references, in my personal opinion, okay, you are welcome to use as much reference as you want to. At the same time, you should also be able to use your creativity and imagination to generate something. But how does that work then? Well, they go hand in hand. They're not separate things. The more you visually look at stuff, it's fuel source for you to be able to actually be creative and use your imagination. But we have to have fundamental skills on being able to create and express those things on the page. So I'm using fundamental skill sets to build a human form, basic sense of anatomy, right? Proportion, structure, line control, pen movements. From there, individual sections of like study of armor, study of like whatever the case is. But you're saying, well, this is imagination, but it's based on reality, based on stuff I've seen before. Yes, I'm generating this thing I'm for the first time, but I'm also looked at stuff from like the Elden Ring game. I've been playing that. So I've been playing Elden Ring. I want to draw something based on fantasy now. But am I using something of a reference directly to it for this? No, of course not. But would I be against it? No. I think you'd be more than I'd be more than happy to, honestly. So why am I not now? Well, because I don't need to, right? That's all it is. I just don't need to. But is it wrong if you did? Of course not. Because I've used reference for many years and still today. So to me, there should be no debate. It's more of an understanding of the fact that they go hand in hand. They're not separate. Imagination and creativity and using references. People think of references as a handicap, but it's not a handicap. It's fuel source. It's data. It's inspiration for you to create. So it makes no sense to separate those two things. If I hope you understand what I'm saying. Um, the more you hopefully hear that from other people, it gives you then maybe a sense of confidence to know that what you can do to learn is to look at more things observationally, reference wise, watching movies, playing games, you know, whatever the case is, you know. Anyways, sorry, let's move on here to the drawing. If I missed a bunch of questions, I do apologize. Let's shift this down a little bit. It's gonna be some kind of tongue creature thing here. I don't know what I want to create with this weird humanoid creature monstrous thing. We'll see. That question about referencing, of course, comes up quite often. And I perfectly welcome those questions. It's just that, the debate of that, I'm curious as to where it comes from. And what I said earlier was I'm assuming that you're getting it from social media, you know. So I like to speak on those parts mainly because again you asked me for my opinion, which is why I'm answering it. But I'm not saying that you should automatically just know, So of course that's not the case, especially if you're just starting off into the world of art. Many of those kinds of assumptions could be made because that is all you've been seeing, you know. And so the more you can join on things like this and talk to other people and be a part of an art community, it'll show you, ways on being able to approach this growth on the educational side. Are there any perspective exercises you would recommend, especially for drawing figures in perspective? Um, Now, if you're trying to actually create figures within a perspective space, because we have to obviously have the movement of the camera as it goes up and down, left and right, but also changes of lens. Within that, of course, still building basic forms, blocks, the cylinders, and different kind of form languages within them. The more you can build those primitives in an accurate sense, and then put them together to represent human bodies, is really the best way to go. Because having those primitives can help you understand where the lines of degree are going into. The figurine, Cool Knight, which one are you talking about? Give me context too. Let's put the other foot here. And I'm going to have this guy's body. Some kind of weird twisted neck-like structure. Maybe I'll give it a bunch of its own armor set around his neck. And its head will be lopped off here. And these are just shapes that represent certain details. I have a lot more stuff to do in this. Sorry, it's off the camera. I have a lot more stuff to do in this. So we're only just getting started right now. Once we get this done, hopefully it'll take it to a level that I have a certain thought in mind in terms of how this visual look, in terms of the drawing, the finish. Kind of want to keep it on a very kind of classical hatching type of look. So all these shapes are just to help me understand general placement, information. Details are not really being placed in just yet. Okay, let's go back up top. Yeah, so oh, you're talking about the one on my Instagram post, the story. Yeah, that was a Street Fighter character, the Chun Li one. That was made by a company called PCS Toys. PCS Toys. You'll find them on Sideshow. So, question here, as well as what's your opinion on working with commissions as a beginner artist? Do you think it can be advisable? Sure, why not? If you have the opportunity, if someone comes to you looking for work from you because they've either seen something that you've done, it's the only way that you would have gotten a commission, right? That somebody reaches out to you saying, "Hey, we saw your work on social media," or whatever the case is, and they ask for you to be able to help them make a commission piece, then yeah, jump into it. Just because you feel like, well, I'm just starting, I don't know if I'm ready for that. Well, you'll never really know when you're ready to start working. You just have to start doing it, basically. I mean, let's just say they paid you a couple bucks here and there. Of course, more would be better, and so don't be afraid to ask for some money. If you're doing it for free, I would advise against that. But being paid something for your time, it'd be something to kind of get that negotiation starting, that practice. It's something I would wisely do. Stay within your comfort zones. All right, draw things you like to draw. Of course, that's what you should be showing. I can draw characters or creatures or animals or whatever the case is, and people will come to you looking for that kind of work. So then you understand how to approach that content. If somebody came to you saying, "Hey, draw me this," and you've never drawn it before, then you're probably going to be feeling a little bit more anxious about that. So you can choose whether or not you want to take it, but I would say it's better to make sure people understand what they're getting into, right? So, but do I think it's okay to move into it? Yeah, absolutely. It's a good practice. In a minute, once I establish some of the major additional forms here, I'm going to zoom in closer to some of these areas. Looks like a rock star, some kind of band member cover of some kind of rock 80s rock album or something like that. It's not going as vile and threatening as I wanted to be. I don't know if I have that quality or element about it within my own work. Creating work that's like horror based or super like dark fantasy kind of stuff. I mean, I love it. I'm looking at it, but I just don't think I have the knack for it. So when I try to attempt it, it always comes off a little bit light. But I recognize what I'm trying to go for because I've seen it so often. I certainly like attempting it. This particular piece is not exactly where I thought it would go. That's fine, by the way. That's the thing about this is that you can have a certain thought or idea as to like what you might want to try to go for, but as you're presented with something, you got to obviously move with it. The key thing here is adaptation. It wasn't one thing, but now I'm going to move in that direction because that's what it is. So you just move with it, right? The more you try to fight that and you force it to be something you're trying to do or expect it to be, it's not going to work. It's going to fall apart. So the idea is to be able to not give up, not compromise, but understand what is actually then formulating here and being able to move along with it, basically. Do I believe in daily practice? Yeah, absolutely. Daily practice could be things of, obviously daily sketching in your sketchbook, to also just visualizing things through other means of creativity, photography work. Maybe you like to shoot film, maybe you like to sculpt, maybe you like to, watch movies. But other sorts of visual practices can be done that's not actually physically drawing too. So daily practice is not just hand the paper work. A daily practice could be mental. Is there a preferred progression when signing up for classes? Where do you recommend beginner starts? The basics within perspective, figure drawing, from proportion to proportion isn't, as in like analytical figure kind of stuff. That's a good place to start. Even just basic life, what is that? Still life drawings, that kind of stuff too. Basic 101. So those kind of early classes are great to begin on because, again, like I said, it introduces you to the world of the tool sets of drawing. So you want to be able to play first before you get really serious about trying to turn it into some sort of like regiment and daily exercise. Because you got to be able to just do it every day initially. And if you can't find that angle or position to make it feel like something is something you want to do all the time, then once you turn it into something that's like work, you don't want to do it anymore. So you have to be careful how you begin actually. Some of you might understand what I'm talking about. So I started at the age of 5 drawing. And for me, drawing was similar to like playing with just toys. It was just fun to do, you know. Um, so because I did it every day with playing with toys with friends and going outside and basically enacting things of characters and whatnot, it translated into my drawings. So having drawing kind of sessions for me weren't about some kind of like practice thing and making it some kind of official career choice, especially at the early age. It was just because it's all I wanted to do was for fun. As I got older, of course, it eventually becomes something very kind of regimental and um, an actual exercise and form of practice to get a quality level in terms of professional means. But still, I retain that sense of fun factor within the work that I do because the things that I draw are still similar to what I did when I was a kid. You know, characters and creatures and dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. So it hasn't really changed because of that. And that's why it's still really fun to me. So we're just chiseling away at this bit by bit by bit. We put some like additional weapons around as if he's been pierced with it. Other kinds of swords and weapons. That always looks really nice when you have like a bunch of other kind of weapons sitting around on top on a hill or inside of an enemy. Again, loosely drawing first, just trying to get a sense of where everything is. Let's put another one way up here. Okay. See if we have any other questions I missed. Sorry, it says like I missed a question. Oh, there it is. Is there preferred progression? Okay, so you're talking about in context to my classes. With my classes, starting with the basics, dynamic sketching, is where I would start. Just the basic dynamic sketching. From there, it's kind of laid in order. There's the extension class. Then we have the we used to have design thinking. I'm taking that part out, but it goes from there into the new one, which is character designs coming up soon. Um, but I would probably take the figure based one first. So it'd be dynamic sketching, extension, figure dynamics into character design, basically. Right now, it's in the later stages more character driven. In the beginning, dynamic sketching is more about the general observational techniques. Gray since one is asking, would I ever advise beginners to draw directly with pen? If so, what would be the main purpose of doing that? So yeah, sure, absolutely. But like I said, don't feel like you have to get stuck to that one pen. The pens that we use in classes are just typical pens like this, felt tip pens. The Staedtler pigment liner, the Micron, Faber-Castell. This is a high tech. These are all great pens to begin with because, again, like I said, it's an aspect of building confidence with your tool set because this is scary to use. Having a blank piece of paper and starting with drawings with this kind of tool, it's frightening because you could make a mistake from the first line and you're done. So that means you have to be very aware of what you're doing from the beginning to the drawing to the end of it. As soon as you make a mistake, you lose focus to what you're doing, then you do make those mistakes, right? So you have to be conscious to the present of you creating it, which means it requires a lot of decision making, a lot of attentiveness about your line movement, pressure, speed, all those things, but to help at the end of it to build confidence towards that line work, right? So at the end of it, you're going to fail a lot. And through that failure, you're going to be able to move forward because you learn from those mistakes. JW is fine as saying you're learning how to draw boxes now with Drawbox. Yeah, you don't feel ready to draw anything else now. Okay, well that's the thing. At some point you have to make that transition, and the only way to do it is just by trying it really, and make a lot of failures, right? Versus when I was just doing it for fun previously. Definitely feels a sense of paralysis, of course. But this is why you take classes. Going through the how to draw a box thing or draw boxing, I'm sorry, is that you're going through it on your own. And yes, you have a community there, of people there supporting you and doing those things, but they're all also kind of doing the same thing you are. They're trying to learn. But if you don't have anyone there on a hands-on approach to show you, well, take this and do this, it's hard to translate. So you kind of need someone there to kind of guide you to that point, not hold your hand, but to point a direction, right? Saying you can go that way and try it, and they can give you then the feedback by saying what I've seen. I will now tell you this and make those adjustments, right? Kenny's asking, do I, speaking of careers, do I still do studio work or do you mainly do your own stuff and teach? You've been doing studio work now for 4 or 5 years, and you're starting to think, is this something I want to do forever? It's a good question because, well, let's keep drawing while I'm doing this. That question is quite large in terms of where I can go towards. I won't spend a large amount of time answering it. But basically, I am still doing more work. That's not just education and my personal stuff. I still do get hired on for projects and whatnot. Right now, I've been on a bid to work on a couple of projects. A couple of them have been on hold because of script writing. One was for a show for HBO Max. Another one was for something else for a different animation studio in Europe. So stuff like that pops up. I usually take about 2, 3, maybe 4 freelance jobs a year. That's it, because I try to restrain how much of that world I jump into. I still want to keep in touch with it, but my main emphasis is on education. So yes, of course, I teach heavily, but I still will take on concept art jobs when they approach me. But they're few and far in between because I don't really put myself out there for it. They come to me because either it's a word of mouth thing or they know me from friendships or past connections. So usually those are the kind of jobs I like taking, like working with people that I've known before in the past. But to continue on to that, you're also talking about the fact that you've been doing now studio work for yourself 4 or 5 years, and you're starting to think, is this something you want to do forever? And for me, I came to that conclusion after 7 years of working in the studios. So in video games, I worked for 7 years in different sort of companies, all along the West Coast. And once I got 7 years into my career, the last job I was at Sony in San Diego. And I was there for about a year. That was the last in-house studio work that I did. And I never went back because I jumped from maybe like 4 to 5 studios in that 7 years of time. So when you jump from studio to studio, you start to see the patterns and you start to see the similarity between all of them, especially like in where I come from in games. I'm sure animation feels the same way. And you become a little bit jaded from it and disinterested in getting to that world because it just feels like you're just going back into the same mix of things. You're not really growing. You're not really pushing your skills. You're not really making any sort of headway towards what you want to do because at the end of it, you're always working for somebody else. So at some point, there's going to be that fork in the road and you're going to have to choose. Do I stick with what I'm doing now because one is comfortable, it's consistent, it pays me steadily, or do I move my own direction? And the longer you wait, the harder it will be to make that choice. You can still make it, but the risk factor goes up higher. Maybe you buy a house, maybe you have a kid, maybe you start to have responsibilities other besides in yourself. Now, some people are already in that world, and it makes it really difficult to obviously transition to other things you want to go for. But if you're able to now, my opinion is better to move into it sooner, into the things you want to do than later. It's going to be a bit of a struggle in the beginning. 2 or 3 years, I guarantee it'll be hard. Whether financially, whether trying to find work, whether trying to find a headway towards you establishing the things you want to do. But once you get past that hurdle of 2 or 3 years, you'll start to grind yourself in and really get a sense about how to work it. So that's pretty much what I would suggest. But you're also adding, you're tired of job hunting. You like the studio work, want to get to the point where they know and come find you. Of course, that's just with time, absolutely. But it's so stressful in the beginning, especially with the mortgage and bills. Exactly. So, yeah. I understand. But this is the path that you are on, and only you can make that choice. And people can tell you all about their advices and what they've done in their own past, but you can't really use that as a format to make your own decision. It just kind of shows you examples of what's possible. So just because other people have done it doesn't mean it's going to work for you, nor is it something you even want to do, because you might end up jumping that side of it and realize, actually, I like studios. You just go back to it. The idea, of course, is making sure you don't burn bridges. Okay, hold on to those connections, that studio work, the people you know, so that way, if you ever need to go back to it, you can. It's not a safety net, but it's a way to be able to, kind of backtrack it a little bit. Uh, Another question here is: say you're saying, say you're decent at drawing animals, but I'm not good at drawing people, which is what you want to get good at. Would you say I should strengthen what I'm should sorry, missed my place in terms of where the question went. It's scrolled on me. Would you say I should strengthen what I'm good at before I try to strengthen things I'm not good at, or something different? So, what basically you're saying is you like drawing animals, you're relatively good at it. You want to draw people, but you're not that good. Should I stay with something that's comfortable and easy to do, or do something a bit more challenging? Uh, Try not to again separate and partition things like this. If you say, well, if I get good enough at animals, I should be able to draw humans relatively easier, right? Or I'm going to stop that and go to humans instead and draw that as best as I can, and then eventually I'll go back to animals too. The more you separate yourself, there's less time being spent on things you also want to do or things you want to actually practice on. So they kind of I said earlier, this whole idea of referencing and how to use it or not. Even here in this situation, in terms of techniques and subject matter, they also go hand in hand. By learning animal anatomy, vice versa, learning human anatomy, it can cross pollinate into those other types of subjects. Maybe not so much, maybe, okay, some people may not agree with that, which I do. I think it's called comparative anatomy. But also in the fact that, well, just from the technique of approach, mindset, how do I start the drawing? Shape, the form, the perspective of things. That can be translated to different subject matters as well too. So yeah, if you're good at animals, great, but you shouldn't just stay there and then go to humans, but not only just go to humans primarily, draw animals also. That combination of doing both is going to help tremendously. So in my dynamic sketching course, it's all about diversifying as many subjects as you can, right? So you build the confidence on being able to visualize things better rather than just a singular subject as being a way to kind of, increase your confidence. So for sure, I would recommend you draw both. Both. Okay, sorry. I've been drawing enough here. Let's get this thing underway, finished off. I'm going to take it to a certain point, and let's go back into the creature, actually. This guy is going to have a lot of weird stuff on his face now. These are all going to be little tiny heads on here. I saw that one boss character had all those arms on him. Uh, it's one of the first final bosses in the game. But I love multi-hit things. Those things are always creepy. Yeah, of course, Kenny. Hopefully you're doing well, man. It's been a while. Stearns is saying or asking, did I fill different roles in these studio jobs, or were you specifically assigned the role? Concept artist, storyboard. I never worked for a studio, so you're not sure how it works. So it's very situational, depending on the studio you go to. Certain studios that are bigger will have those specific roles, and they have enough people to occupy those positions. Smaller studios, you have to be much more diverse in your skill set. So you might be doing concept art one day, then doing storyboards on another, because as an artist, you're given the task on being able to work on multiple things because they don't have enough people to support that, right? Different industries label things differently as well too. Like as a concept artist in video games, it might be called like a visual development artist in animation. But a viz dev artist doesn't really do character. There's a character designer in animation. But in games, a concept artist can do both. Visual development for things like props and weapons and creatures, but also characters because they're all lumped to one thing. Within a game studio, it can be just labeled concept artist, but there could be also senior concept artists, then also a character concept artist and a creature concept artist, and they can be specialized depending on the company. So it's all dependent on that sizing, maybe the size of the project, the amount of people they have, that kind of thing. Their preference of how they want to run their company. The more positions you have, the more money you're going to spend to fill those jobs. So most times, some companies might want to consolidate a little bit and bring in less people and have that one artist do many more things, and hopefully that person is being paid more. A lot of times they're not. Does that mean that having a versatile skill set is important? Not so much versatile, but adaptable, which is why you focus so much on your fundamentals. With the fundamental skill sets within perspective, figure drawing, drawing basics, painting, color, light, anatomy on a diverse sense, you can have a specialized portfolio, but you can use those skill sets still to adapt them to other things too, which is what I did. So for me, working in the industry, think of me as like the fireman. The project, if there were certain designs that I needed to take care of, it was on fire, I would go there and take care of it in a short amount of time. So I was more of the idea, quick sketch guy. I would come up with the concept and designs. So I wouldn't have enough time to fully render it at times. I would still paint it, but very loosely. A lot of times my turnarounds for like character designs or creatures were like 3 or 4 days. That's it, from beginning to end. Initial idea, sketch, turnaround, research, final painting, all that stuff in 3 or 4 days. But I would use mainly my sketching skill set on being able to tackle those initial problems in the industry. Kasem is asking, With opportunities like Lightbox Expo and other cons coming up, what advice would you give to those that want to speak to amazing artists, others out there? You're fairly shy and haven't had time to practice your social skills. It's a very good question, and it's a difficult one to act on because you can ask this, and I can give you an advice to it, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy for you to just take that information and just use it immediately. And so I'm sure you may have asked this kind of question in many opportunity and times. Maybe you haven't. And if you haven't, as I give you this, you should understand, of course, that as you said, practice is one thing, but you really have to kind of put yourself in that position and try, right? You see what happens with it. The hard part, of course, is we get very embarrassed. We fear the the outcome and also the possibility where they would look at us as someone less than, right? Um, we always want to feel validated and feel as if we're wanted. So the fear of being rejected is very heavy. So it inhibits us from taking a step forward to even ask for things. I've come from, as a core, personally, as someone who was very, very introverted when I was younger. I did not like large crowds. I didn't want to be around people. I had a small group of friends. I was very good with people when they would ask for help, but I'm also a type of person that was more about making sure other people were comfortable. So if that meant that I had to sacrifice my comfort and my physical being for others, I would do so, which is not healthy. But I learned about that, right? And over time, I'm able to overcome these thoughts because you got to also be able to take care of yourself. So in this situation, when you approach someone like an artist, your concern is, I don't want to bother them, right? Maybe the timing is bad. Oh, what I'm going to ask them is stupid, or the stuff I'm going to show them is terrible. It's a waste of their time. So you're concerned about how they're going to feel and how they're going to react to you. Um, but do understand the one thing to help you overcome this is that you're not the only one in that position. And because of the fact that many of the artists you're going to talk to have come from that field, have come from that kind of background, they can understand how it is in your position. So for me, when somebody comes up to me and talks to me, I understand that it's not easy to do so, and I appreciate that moment. So I give them my due attention, right? The idea, of course, how I speak and what kind of words I use is very important. Some artists are not very good about that either, because occasionally you can ask somebody a question and show them stuff, but they could also be socially awkward as well too. So when someone's trying to give you a proper response and they sound awkward as hell, then you get like really kind of weirded out. You're not really quite sure, like, oh, was I supposed to ask that? Or maybe they say something in ways that doesn't sound very receptive or positive, even though they're not trying to intend to do so, but they just aren't really apt on being able to converse, right? So then that affects you, and then of course it perpetuates. It's a downward spiral in many of those occasions. So I've become, going to shows and conventions. The first thing is this: make sure the artists you're talking to are the ones that are actually look what's the word here, receptive to it. So what do we avoid? Well, if you walk up to a table and the artist is sitting there and they're on their phone like this, right? They just head down on their phone, and they're the main operator of the table. Avoid them, okay? Uh, there has to be an effect of professionalism, and to me, that's not professionalism. So whenever I go to shows, I'll only be on the phone, but I'll step away from the table. So if I'm at the table, I'm never on my phone. I'm either going to be drawing, talking, selling something, interacting, asking questions, answering questions, whatever the case is. I'm going to be receptive to that, right? The energy to it. But you know how it feels, right? When you walk up to a table and you see someone there and they're not even looking at you, they're on their phone. There's a wall and a barrier there. You don't even want to talk to them. So then you're saying, "Oh, can I bother you for a second?" Then they kind of get this like irked face. Right then and there, body language is everything. So be able to read people first. That's important. That's a big aspect to it. Um, okay, so you were drawing with me at the Drink and Draw in February. You were there, and so you did you actually come talk to me? I don't remember. I'm sorry, I don't. You're saying you didn't. Again, a lot of people come up to me at times. Um, in any case, in terms of what I was going back to, in that situation, again, being not understanding, but observant of people is the first step. If you can find someone that seems very receptive to maybe talk to you, yeah, approach them. But the thing is, if you go there, let's say with a portfolio, right? Let's say you go to a convention and show like Lightbox Expo this year, which is going to be in October. For anybody who's planning to go to the show, most of you might be bringing in like a not a website, but a sketchbook, a portfolio, something. The idea is when you have your book, don't go to those shows and don't walk up to the table and hold your book in front of you and go up to them and hand it to them saying, "Can I get a portfolio review?" Or, "Hey, I like your work, but would you mind taking a look at my stuff?" It's a little bit forward, in my opinion. The people that are there, of course, want to talk to you. Well, I would say they should be. And yes, they're going to be cordial and all that kind of stuff, but they also want to make sure that you're there to have a conversation. So the first thing you got to do is just talk. Just introduce yourself. I'm so and so. I follow you on this. I've been watching your work a long time. I appreciate these things and this stuff. I've always wanted to know, like, how did you get to where you are now? Ask them questions about them first, right? So you ask them questions about what they're doing and why they're there, and then you focus it on the things you want to do. So don't just walk up to a table, hand them stuff, saying, "Can you look at this for me real quickly?" That's going to create a lot of, again, that wall barrier that they put up, because all of a sudden it feels like this person coming at them. And for most of the artists that are there, they're not used to the social engagement many times. Um, so that can be a little bit off-putting for them. So the idea is to be a bit more tact and approach it in a more of a dialogue sense. Questions, but questions directed at them at first. So if you see someone at an event, right, drink and draw, cons, and you see an artist you want to talk to, you're not really quite sure how to talk to them. Walk up and saying, "Hey, my name is this. I've been following you for a long time. What are you doing here? Like, are you here to sketch the models, or like, are you running a class right now, or ask them about stuff." And then that conversation will go, and then from there it can be natural at that point. Um, I will say that portfolios are also a little bit too official. The best thing you might want to start with is a sketchbook. The sketchbook is the icebreaker because it's not officially there to give yourself a review of exactly how you did things professionally. It's like, hey, this is just the kind of stuff I like to draw. And if you do get into that side of asking them questions about your work, show them a sketchbook first, saying that, hey, here's a quick sketchbook. You can take a quick look at it. These are the kind of things I like to observe and sketch and draw and play with. And I don't know if you have any tips or advices on that. Simple, man. Be like, show them at least 1 or 2 pages directly to them. Focus on a couple pages you want to show, right? Present it to them initially, then saying, actually, now that you saw that, do you mind if I show you my portfolio? So the idea is to build up to it, which takes time, and you can't be sitting there for half an hour to an hour trying to pick their brain. So being mindful of the fact that they're also busy, they're talking to a lot of people, so you want to get to the point, right? But this is where you get nervous. It's like, but I kind of forgot the question, and I'm so afraid to ask things, and my voice gets shaky, and I look so whatever the case is. This is that part again where practice will make it better. It will. Um, I will say that back in February, if you were at that show, you should have come and talked to me because I would have talked to you, right? And now that you know, the idea is that this is not just me. This is a lot of other artists that would feel the same way. So those are a couple of the bullet notes, right? Um, how do you approach? Ask questions, direct it to them, then come to you, show them a sketchbook, ease into the process of it, then show them the portfolio if you have one. If it's not anything official, like portfolio based things or feedback based things, and it's just more about you just want to talk to the person, that can be sometimes I feel a little bit more fear inducing due to the fact that there's nothing really there that you have to talk about, right? Like there's no portfolio, there's no sketchbook. Maybe there's not even a show. You like see him at like some kind of bar and drink and draw. Like, what do I ask him at that point? And how do I even talk to the person? Um, Events is one thing because they're there for a purpose. So you talk about the event. So you talk about the actual location you go to, right? Oh, this is my first time at a drink and draw. How many times have you been here? Kind of thing. Stupid questions like that, right? It sounds lame when you say it, but that's what everybody talks about in the beginning. This is just the general questions that everyone asks, like the weather kind of stuff, right? It's not really important, but it's just a way to get dialogue going. So uh, don't be overly critical and don't overthink in those situations. Because then there's the other part of the embarrassment. It's like, oh god, I wish I didn't ask that. It sounded so stupid. Oh, the weather? I would ask about the question about the weather. No. Um, yeah, and I understand. And those things may like stick with you and haunt you, right? You're like in the shower and you think of it one day, it's like, oh, why did I ask that stupid question? Um, but that's a part of being human. We have those moments. Okay, generally everything is there now. I just want to kind of punch out some details, but I want to switch it out to a different pen. So let's go back to the Esther book. Sorry, I was actually still working on the creature thing. I didn't finish this part. But I hope that helps you a little bit, Kasem. But as I said earlier, just because I say this, it's not gonna make you feel better. You're not gonna feel more confident because you haven't gone through it yet, and you have to just go through it. Nothing I say here is trying to make you feel better, and nothing I say here is trying to tell you how you should do things. But I'm just saying these are things of advice based on my own experience and stuff. What I've done when in those moments and situations where I didn't want to talk to the person, even though I did want to, I didn't know how. It's so and people get using that word paralysis. It is paralyzing. You're this is where it kind of gets creepy. Like you're in a distance, like looking at the artist. You're at a table, like waiting to like speak. Trying to walk in, but you just feel this really heavy weight at the stomach. You know, and it kind of burns a little bit. It's like you're trying to fight yourself, and it feels so embarrassing. And you want to speak to them, but you don't know exactly how to go about it. And then all of a sudden, everything plays in your mind, and all of this is happening literally within just seconds of your mind, but it feels like minutes to tens and 15, 20 minutes at a time, but you're only there for a couple of seconds. But your brain is so overactive. It becomes so strenuous and heavy that you just give up. It's like, that's it. You walk away, right? And then all of a sudden you feel regret. You feel extremely terrible in the fact that you didn't do anything. And all you can do is just play that in your mind over and over and over again. Um, Debilitating at times, right? So I know what that feels like. So how did I get over it? I mean, age, growing up. When you get older, you just don't care as much, you know. Um, that's a part of it, but also teaching. A big part of it is my teaching part, right? Because I was forced into a position where I had to teach classes where I started at in my late 20s, and I felt that way still in the very beginning. This was over 12 years ago when I first started teaching, and in my mid to late 20s, I was only working for a couple of years, so to teach a class in front of 20, 30 people, I was like, I don't know how to start. So of course, it was nerve wracking. It took about a year for me to just get comfortable. Well, the one here in Pasadena, I don't know how often it is actually. I don't know the information. I'm sorry. If you go to Concept Art Association, I think that's what it is. Just Google it. You'll find their website, and they should list out the dates when they do drink and draws here in LA, Pasadena area. I'll attend them once in a while. Sometimes they'll invite me to come out specifically. Other times I'll see it. I just come myself. The one in February, I came out because I had lots free that night. They hadn't done one in like 2 years, so I wanted to come out and draw a little bit. And a good amount of people turned out. It was all outdoors. Still drawing these weird heads. A lot of these are going to be shadows and shapes and whatnot. Again, that's why I'm drawing really loosely at the moment. I'm not really concerned about if it's all perfect and precision based. I don't care. I'm just trying to move, find things, have fun with the sketch and drawing. And by the end of it, when it all comes together, that's another part of this is that as I'm drawing this, your brain could be telling you, it's like, oh, that's not good, or you're doing terrible here, or you're concerned about certain things about the way it's going to come out or how people look at it. But because I've done this long enough, the confidence in the fact that at the end of this, when I bring it all together, I'm sure it'll work. And that's me relying upon muscle memory and the experience of doing so. And this wasn't something of a feeling in the beginning that I had, of course. So as I went from big shapes and forms, I'm going to some of the nitty gritty small things now. There's gonna be all piles of blood and gunk down here. I don't have to show the creature fully. It's abstracted because it's just a background piece and it's just there for context of him sitting on something. So whether I show it complete, I mean, it's a creature. I can also make it up. So, it can be whatever I want it to be. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is zoom in. Excuse me as I play with this camera a little bit. I do apologize for the shaking. I thought I would have limited the amount of shake because I actually mounted this thing against the wall. But what I found is not just the camera shake, it's the goddamn table. So when I move the table, it's the table that's shaking, not the camera. So the table's wobbly. On a stationary wall, as the table wobbles, the entire thing wobbles. So what you're seeing is not camera, it's the table itself. So I'm going to try to find out, maybe I can remedy this where one thing, yes, the camera still shakes a little bit, but I might need to replace this table being a bit more of a stable thing. Question here about any chance you travel to the Midwest for events because you're broke? Ain't no way you're making it to LA. Well, in the Midwest, unfortunately, there's not a lot going on, to my knowledge. To my knowledge, if anybody here knows of anything, please do share any events, conventions, maybe that's going on in the middle of summer, spring, fall. Share. I don't know of any. I will list out some things that are going on for me. June will be the Monster Palooza event in Pasadena. Monster Palooza is one of my favorite shows in LA. Basically, it's a big makeup effects convention for film and movies. And I really enjoy it because you have a lot of artists that go there that display like sculptures and stuff. So I'll be there at a table. I signed up for one. It's my first year at Monster Palooza. I've always wanted to do that show, but I've never been to it because the tables would always sell out. So this year, I reached out to them and saying they had a couple openings, and they literally had one table open up by the time I asked them, because they had two, and then one got picked up as soon as I asked, and they gave it to me. So I will be at Monster Palooza with a table. I'll have the blacksmith stuff. I have a new sculpture I'm releasing and pre-ordering there at the show, which I'll display with the company called Plastic Cell. And then after June, there's a slight potentialness that I might be in Florida. So Florida, there will be a Comic Con in July, and I have no idea which Comic Con it is. So I'll find out hopefully. This is through Super Ronnie. So Super Ronnie is asking me if I would come out to Florida for the Comic Con for the Artist Alley table. It'll be just me, but none of this stuff is secured yet. It's very tentative. So if anybody's in Florida, there is a chance, a minute chance, I might be there in July. But that's like 2 weeks before San Diego. So I'll be at San Diego Comic Con in July. So I'll be there with the Super Ronnie crew again. Uh, I don't think Kim Jong Gi will be there. I think it's going to be me and one other Korean artist who will attend San Diego. Aliza will be there, Ivanova, but she'll have her own table as well. Um, Let me think. After San Diego Comic Con, I will potentially. This is all like potential. None of this stuff is secured yet because the calendar right now is still very. It's in distance, you know. Um, After San Diego, there's a chance I might head out to Portugal in Malta for the THU event. Trojan Horse is a unicorn. Was a unicorn or something like that. I was invited or asked if I wanted to go by the Super Ronnie crew. So they said, if you want to go, we'll send you. Um, so I don't know yet. I've never been to THU in Malta, but they're having it this year. But I can imagine with all the stuff going on right now in the world, from COVID stuff and the conflicts and whatnot, I don't know if international travel is going to be very easy at this point. Traveling to Portugal from the US, I don't know if the flight to that will be straightforward. I'm not sure. Right now, what I'm doing is I've drawn the general shape, language, and details of the character and the stuff. I'm hitting shadow shapes first, like deep recessed shadows. I'm indicating with darks. A couple of hatch marks here and there, but I do the darkest elements first. Basic top-down lighting. Okay, so the shadow sides inside here and here and here. I darken those areas. Then I'll be hatching back into this afterwards. So that'll be the last layer I do. Another common question is, how would someone join Superani? Well, it's not a business, okay? So I'm not hired by them. There's no boss per se. There's a manager for the brand, and they can suggest things that we can attend and do together. Think of it kind of like I guess what's the best word here? a collective, right? The collective. So as a collective, it's just a collective of artists all moving in the same direction. So we all are independent still. As an independent, we do our own things. But Super Ronnie as the brand can help us distribute or market things for us. That's all it is. Um, so people can potentially come in and out, but how do they come in? Well, because they're people that they know. So a lot of times it's just friends, people they interacted with or went to the show with, you know. And so obviously Kim Jong Gi is the center of that part, and we have Hyunjin Kim who's the manager in the Korea side. So as they go to different shows and meet people, they become friends with them. So they say, hey, you should come and join us and work with us and doing shows and events and that kind of thing. And that's all it is. So you don't pay into it. They don't really pay you unless you're actually working on a book that they distribute and publish. Then obviously whatever they sell, there's all profits are split up between you and them and whatever the case is. So it's just a friend and family kind of thing, right? So yeah, Super Runny people will talk to each other outside, and we just would text each other, chat each other up, see how we're doing, have video calls once in a while. I talk to Carl a lot, Carl Kempinski. You know, he's moving around quite a bit after his whole accident with the bike stuff. He's doing a lot better physically, but we always chat on Instagram just privately. Yeah, Carl, I talked a lot. Nicholas Namiri, I talked to a lot. So they're just people I like to hang out with. So whenever they come to the U.S., you know, we always hang out, go draw, and have a drink here and there. So yes, they're just friends. That's what this is. Has Super Ronnie ever visited Miami? No, I don't think so. Which is why I think they're trying to figure out which Comic Con to go to in Florida. So I don't know exactly which one they'll attend. That's good to hear, Binky. Binky Brown. Drawing now. Good. Whatever you're drawing doesn't matter. But just sketch, interact, ask questions, have fun. Think of this kind of like a drink and draw online. Except I'm the one with the voice. So as you can see now, again, I'm just hitting these dark areas first. And this is how it'll help me refine the sketch, clean up some lines a little bit here and there, define some details, offset and kind of layer things in different ways using line weight and contrast. And we're just doing it bit by bit. There's no rush. Don't have to go so fast. The faster I move, the more this will shake. So I'm trying to be mindful of that because I don't want to give you guys a headache looking at a wobbling camera. Question is, I'm curious if people ever email studios to ask for internships if the company's website doesn't openly offer it. There's no harm in asking. No harm. So if you ever are inclined to attempt to find out, yeah, reach out to the HR team. Ask like, are there any internship opportunities? Um, things that you could be doing to work with them in some ways. In the game studios, one of the bigger studios I've been at, we used to have art interns, 3D stuff. Not so much on concept, but that could be a possibility. But it's dependent on the company in the studio. In games, in animation, typically they have programs, but those programs are reserved for full time students in colleges and stuff like that. So if you're not a full time student, it'd be harder to work into those internships. But in games, there's a higher chance if that company offers it. But it has to be a much bigger company. Has have I ever gotten to a situation where I've gotten drunk and woken up with a sketch in front of me? No, I have not. I've fallen asleep to sketching many times. That's just because I was tired. Usually, if I'm hanging out with my friends, we have a drink and draw night. We're drinking and we'll be sketching together. But I don't think any of us really get hammered anymore. I'm pretty much past that age. I can't handle hangovers anymore. So never liked it to begin with. Certainly don't mind drinking, but nowadays, like I'm trying to cut back on that. That was my what, mid 30s when I was drinking a lot more. I started late. I want to push the background of his figure darker in value so that the sword comes to the front. Just some shadow shades beneath. I'm not going to make it all dark because I don't want this to be super high graphic kind of look. But just in a couple areas where overlaps like this will happen. Is scattered or focused learning better? I'm on a game design course and would like to portray my designs better for my VFX on paper. Um, I think, again, in that situation, it's very dependent on the project and in that moment of time. Well, even within the same project, whatever you're working on in that moment, one method might work and another method may not, right? So let's say you're designing a character as an example. And that one character, you approach it from more of a focus standpoint, meaning you have a set process on how to problem solve it. From the mind map to the mood board to the sketching exploration to the turnaround decision making, color sets, final render, all that stuff. But as you go in that first step of trying to be more focused, you may hit a wall. For some reason, you can't seem to find the inspiration. You can't seem to find the way to move forward with it. Sorry, I keep bumping the table. So that focused approach may not work for a different design within the same project, which might require you to be more creative in how you begin to solve that thing, whether through being more open to try spontaneously, scattered methods of working. So having one set method on how to draw or create things is not going to be the best way. But using those fundamentals, like I said, through time, adaptability will give you the multiple pathways to follow. And you learn from those things by trial and error and doing it multiple, hundreds of times. Um, but yeah, there's no real direct answer to that question. Based on my experience, it's all situational based on what you're working on in that moment of time, and also how you feel. You know, sometimes a tool can make a difference. You work on a design and you're trying things that you normally would on digital, and it just doesn't seem to click. You can't seem to have fun with it. It's not really looking really good. And then sometimes I'll like try analog. I go to like pen and paper, and it feels different. It's like, oh, that catches better. And you start to have a working method and a working momentum. And you transition back into the digital to finalize things. Vice versa, analog doesn't really work so well. It's like, oh, I want to try digital stuff now. So the idea is to be open to adapt in those moments, to go back and forth. You got a real question. How do you try to steer away from using reference and just using your noggin? So we had that question earlier, and so the quick answer to this is not trying to steer away from it. It's about being able to implement it together with the use of imagination, because they go together. Without the reference, you're not going to be able to actually create something out of your noggin, right? So the more you look, the better. So you never want to exclude the reference at all. But the thing is, the more you accrue it, it's not that you want to exclude it, it's that you don't have to use it. But the option and the alternative is always there. And you should feel okay to do that. So how often do I try digital? All the time, because most of my professional work and class work is all digital. So I draw and paint in Photoshop often. The idea is that digital tools are there to replicate the analog, but it creates much more of a streamlined process and a means of being able to change things faster on digital. Because with analog, trying to repaint and redraw something will take you much longer to do, which is why digital is so much faster in that way. Not better, but it's a means of a tool to help you problem solve. That's all it is, just a tool. Any classes for recommendations on digital rendering and basics? There are classes from all these schools, from like the Brainstorm Academy, Brainstorm School, to Concept Design Academy, to CGMA. All those primary schools that give you feedback will offer a digital rendering class. Do I know any way to learn how to draw complex scenes with lots of small details? Should we learn how to draw everything realistically? No, you can draw things stylistically if you want, but drawing things from realism helps you understand the functionality, aesthetics, and the elements that exist within them, and you then choose what you want and don't want, which creates then potential things of style choices, right? Um, so yeah, that's a, a choice based on how you want to create things, realistically or not. But it's all dependent also upon maybe what you're creating and what it's for. But to observe, to look at many things in reality, and drawing from them is the first step. Like for instance, if I said, draw for me a rhinoceros right now, and let's say you've never seen a rhinoceros in your life, how are you supposed to draw that, right? What if you don't even know what it is? Like, what's a rhinoceros, right? You say, oh, it's a common animal. Everybody's seen it before. It comes from Africa. It's like, oh, I've never seen one. I never even heard of one. And and then someone shows it to you. It's like, that's a really crazy looking thing. Your information, expands a little bit more, right? Because of the information visually that's in front of you. So if I said now create for me something that is based off of that rhinoceros. Oh, it's got that crazy long horn and huge body, and it's got this, structure that's massive and heavy set. So you can use that information and apply it to things you want to create. Now you can also draw the actual thing. You can actually draw me the rhinoceros if you want to, based on what you see, observationally in reality, at a zoo, or if you actually go to Africa, or look at a photograph, right? Never heard of what CG Verse gives you. I'm not quite sure of that one. I can't recommend nor give opinion about a place I don't really know much about. So unfortunately, I don't really have an opinion on that. CG Verse, don't know it. Might be common. Might be someone that people use it quite often. But for myself personally, I don't know it. Let me actually zoom out a little bit. Excuses I do this because the closer I am to this, the wobbliness is much more strong. Okay, hopefully it'll start to calm down a little bit. Still close enough to be able to see things. So. I spent all of this time mounting that damn camera onto the wall. It didn't really solve the wobbling issue. Trust me, I'm very aware of it. Um, Hopefully, I can find another way solution. Again, bit by bit, piece by piece now, working small areas. This is where I slow it down and not really nitpick, but just, go into different sections and parts and help try to figure out what those elements are. Whether I'm going to give more information and details or to push on some of the darks to help create the contrast of interest. Is a mentorship specifically for building a portfolio and classes for building art foundations? Okay, so the question was: are mentorships specifically for building portfolios, and are classes specifically for building foundations? Um, no, not really. I mean, if I was to answer, just kind of blatantly, no, because a mentorship could be used to also help you find a pathway at the very beginning. To help you establish a good working method of advice. What classes should I take? How do I actually, understand to, not only train in this method, but implement it in a way that you do? And vice versa, where Classic can also help you build portfolios for the content in advanced classes. However, based on my opinion, I think it's better you take your mentorship at the later period of educational experience to build content for your portfolio. So even though anybody could take a mentorship at some point in the beginning or later, my advice is to take it later. So let me add to that. Why? Why would I say mentorship is better later on? Because when you're learning fundamentals and foundations, learning from just one person, a mentor person in front of you, which might have 20 years in advance of experience, you might think that's a good thing. However, you have no real, I guess, sense of relationship there because they can teach you all those methods and show you how to do those things. But as you're growing through it, there's no one next to you going through the same pain you're going through now. That person who's instructed you has gone through it in the past, right? So what you want is then to be in a group of people that are going through it with you currently. So that means being in a classroom where you have like 15, 20 other people in the same boat trying to problem solve things. You will learn just as much from them as you will also learn from the instructor or mentor. So you actually have much more available data of information, how one person did something, how they approached it, what are the ways to solve it, right? So in that situation, learning from a class for fundamentals is better than a mentorship, but it doesn't mean you can't do the other way around. I hope that makes sense. How long should it take a student to learn the dynamic sketching approach realistically? So for me, it took a year, one solid year, where I took that class, dynamic sketching, 3 times in a row at Art Center. I took it once the first time being introduced to it. I took it a second time based on my instructor recommending it, saying, come take it again. The third time I was in the class, but I was a TA, but I was still doing all the work with the students. So I took it 3 times initially, the very first round into it, the year. Um, and in that year, I felt comfortable. I wasn't fully confident, but comfortable, right? So, and that's me drawing pretty much every single day of that year with my instructor. Well, if I explain my deepest, darkest secret, it wouldn't be a secret anymore, would it? Yeah, of course, the questions are very much welcome. That kind of stuff about uh, the educational experience of classes you should take, working with mentors or not. And again, this is just an advice. Um, and just because I say that, if you have a certain opportunity, let's say you have an art mentor in front of you at a school or someone you met, and if they're offering you that kind of, working relationship, I mean, yeah, you should consider it. What would you recommend a student to draw or study while they saved up for dynamic sketching? Um, so, what would I recommend for them to draw? I mean, I could just say the typical things, which is like, build forms and draw boxes and get your perspective ready. I mean, that could very much help practicing your basic perspective again, right? Drawing a lot more boxes because we'll be doing a lot of that. But the thing is, we will be doing that in class. So, in my opinion, I would say draw whatever subject really caters to your interest, that really favors you. Now, why? Because I said earlier, the tools are things you have to become really familiar to. So play with the tools to get really comfortable with the pen. Because as much as the actual visuals and the technique you're trying to problem solve, the other battle is this, trying to get the pen to work with you. So if you're coming into dynamic sketching to realistically practice before you go into it, is to play with these tools more. Whatever you draw doesn't matter. Draw things that you like because it's stuff you can approach and have fun with. But use the tools that we're going to be using because that will help you build a familiarity to it. And let me know if you have an additional question there, but I hope that also aligns with what your thoughts are on that. T Skull 1. Marstar, what was the most impressive student you ever had? Well, she came from, and I know the direct answer to this, she came from Malaysia and she immigrated over and was a student at Art Center. She was probably in her late 20s because she already had a degree in architecture. So, of course, you can imagine that would help immensely. And it did. She really wanted to work in the field of exterior design, interior design for entertainment work. So, things like parks and, theme parks and stuff like that. Um, and she came into my class dynamic sketching, I think around 2014, 15, I want to say. I think. I can't fully remember exact dates. But she took my class the first time and just demolished it. Uh, and she did amazingly well. Just the amount of drive, effort, and the quality level in the work. But the big aspect was her ability to also work with others. She assisted a lot, coached, and directed. A lot of it, I'm sure, was because she was just a bit older than some other students. A lot of students at arts aren't, in the current time are like 18, 19, 20. So her being in the probably mid 20s, late 20s, of course, made her more senior. And that gave her the opportunity to work with more younger people, which they, ate up because she was so good. And then she stuck with me being a TA for a number of sessions, and she would come back constantly. And I helped her with things like, doing volunteer work because she was trying to get her visa stuff for immigrating here to the States. Um, signing letters and stuff for her lawyer and whatnot. So now she's obviously has a green card, I think, and she works at Imagineering, Disney. I'm not sure if she's still there. I haven't spoken to her in a couple of years after the whole quarantine stuff. It's like people kind of like blocked up their their rooms. Um, but I think she's doing well. Extremely humble, very nice, but incredibly just skilled, not talented, driven and skilled. You know, and I didn't say talented because she worked hard. She worked really hard to get to that point. And the talent, it just we assume talent is something you're just kind of born with. You're just born to do that thing, right? But it was the effort it took for her to realize that thing. So that's what I recognize always. Her name, by the way, is it'd be hard to understand through verbal, but her name is Zhao Qing. Zhao Qing is from Malaysia. I'll put in the chat. Small bits by small bits. This kind of looks like the Sword of Omens now. Maybe I'll give it that look. The cat eye in the middle. I'm pretty sure there are many people here that might be coming into these sessions for the first time, watching a live stream. So I welcome those that are attending here for the first session in a long while. These kind of stream sessions, like I said, are pop-ups. They happen once in a while. I'm not as consistent as I like it to be. I always try to promise the fact that I'll be on like once every 2 weeks, something like this, but life gets busy. I'm sure all of you understand. So I will always try to pop on at some point though. So if you can catch me, great. If you subscribe, awesome. If you don't, it's fine. Um, these streams are free. These ones I will be posting on YouTube usually by the week afterwards. So the past streams are the ones right now that's happening to watch it more immediately. Subscribers will have access to it immediately. But for on YouTube, it's posted like usually a week or two after. So if you want to catch the earlier part of this, you can watch it at some point in the future. In the meantime, we are starting to get underway. Some of the finer details and small bits here and there. I want to get into some of the hatching here in just a moment. What I'm doing right now is still some shadow shapes, immediate contrast of things. And then I'll be using hatching to fill in some halftones, texture, and gradients of value. Would you recommend someone who has a degree in art but has not practiced in much time to continue studying at an art academy? Yeah, sure, why not? It depends on what your intention is, though, Gizmonio. If you want to work within the field of art and design on a commercial sense of like a studio, then yes, going to an art academy to build more of your skills that you haven't practiced as much will be highly recommended. But if it's more of a personal thing, like it's just a hobby to you, I just want to draw for myself, fun. Then it's like you don't have to take it so seriously. You just take it on your own time. But an art academy can still help once in a while, right? Because it exposes you to people that are in the, like kind of the same, maybe the same position as you, like they're trying to do the same things, maybe, or to be able to get the actual art community to interact on that part. I mean, here's the thing too: is like the actual educational part never goes away. Even when you've been working for 20 years, you're still going to try to learn as much as you can. So the art education never disappears, and you're always looking for new opportunities to learn, whether by taking a class again or going to things like art events, conventions, or drink and draws and sketch and draw with people. Because drawing with others is highly educational. For me in my youth, the largest education that I got was not necessarily just high school, which is like a public school, which is fine. But arts is something that I was focusing on there at that school too. But it was kind of just general. But the biggest education was with me working with my friend. So I friended uh, a guy named Izzy Madrano, and he was a grade higher than I was. He was a junior when I met him, no, a sophomore, and I was a freshman when I first came in. And we just became friends because he liked to draw as much as I did. So we just hang out and go to like a diner and sketch all night. And that education of working with somebody else was invaluable because as I show stuff, he can like say certain things about it. He would see the quality level of stuff, and maybe we're not like sitting there critiquing each other, but we make comments, But then we also have similar interests. So because you have that encouragement factor there, it makes you grow that much more because you're driven by that. It's a friendly competition. This ink, I think, is pulling to the top. Hold on. Yeah. You wish there were good Ateliers in Florida. Well, there is a good school out there called Ringling. Well, I don't know how good it is, but I've had students from that school come out to California and take my classes physically from Ringling School of Art and Design or something like that. I'm not sure exactly where they're located, but they've produced some really good people. Ringling, the circus name, you know. And Florida, I'm not sure if Aaron does this right now physically, but Aaron Blaze does hold workshops once in a while. I'm not sure if he's doing anything out in Florida anytime soon, but he's on that side. And Aaron's good, as an instructor. And I was hoping to see him maybe this upcoming May. Uh, we were trying to plan a trip to Yellowstone, but he just had a really terrible flight experience. So I'm not sure if he's interested in flying right now at all. Um, but it'd be great if he would come out. You love art, online art classes. We don't really have any art communities here. I've been learning so much for a fraction of a price of our schools. Yeah, I mean that's the benefit of online classes. But the downside, of course, is that those online communities are not next to you. So being somewhere where you physically work with people is a different experience than working with people online. Because at the end of the day, when you shut that computer off or you are off your phone, unless you're on a Discord or something like this, people that might be active posting things. But like I said, you're not sitting next to somebody watching them draw and work. It's different. It's not better or worse. It's just different. So the idea is to expand your experience as much as possible, to incorporate much of the online as much as you can, which is great. But also, if you have an opportunity to actually try to incorporate the physical side of education as well too, either attending like a workshop physically or going to expos and shows, gallery events, and depending on where you are, like you said, it doesn't really have them. But this is where you have to take the initiative to find it or start it. Start your own drink and draw. You'd be surprised at how many more people are around you that want to do art and sketch. It's just that you guys don't know that you exist. you know, that's how do you put that out there? It's like, well, maybe go to a coffee shop, put up posts and signs saying, "Hey, we're gonna do a drink and draw this Friday nights" and stuff like that. Maybe one person will show up, but that's how it starts with one person. And don't tell me the stuff, putting stuff together by your own means is impossible. Because I've had students that were my own that would start international workshops on their own. And I would coach them on that kind of stuff. And they've done it. And it's not because they had a lot of money. And it's not because, they were that good or anything like that. Some of them were just beginning. But they had the interest of bringing people together. Is it expensive? I had no idea. Ringling. I don't know what the cost is. I'm assuming it's similar to what Art Center is. Art Center has its reputation being really expensive, but most art schools around the U.S. are just probably around the same price, honestly. Facebook is good too. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Facebook is kind of dying down, but when it comes to its group community stuff, it's actually really good. The personal Facebook thing is dead, but um, advertising, marketing, groups, branding, that kind of stuff is awesome for it. Do you think it's possible to get stuck if you don't practice a certain amount of time? I've been practicing daily for a couple of years, but I don't feel like I'm improving. Well, are you saying a couple of years from the very beginning of your education? Because a couple of years of when you just started is really not that long, right? So of course you probably wouldn't see a huge amount of improvement. I mean, you probably have a better understanding. You probably know much more than you did a couple of years ago. But the physical application of it, your muscle memory, will take much longer than a couple of years to get really to see a strength of. Line quality wise, line confidence to tools and manipulation, all those things. How long will that take? It's dependent on you. Some people will grow 5 years, 10 years. Some people need 20, 30 years. Some people need a lifetime to get a certain point of what they think is good. But then the expectation is a killer. So, you know, it's a delicate balance for sure. I don't want to get cut off by the camera, so I'm going to stay within the middle here. And at some point, I'll zoom out. I'll keep working on it. I don't have plans to cutting off this stream anytime soon just yet. We're in about almost 2 hours. It's about an hour and 56 minutes. So I'll probably keep going. I'm going to keep working on this thing, talking to people and sketching and drawing here. But if people leave and head out, and it's nice to have you guys in here. But for those of you that are staying longer, if you're working and drawing, you're welcome. Normally, my streams last maybe 2 hours. But today, I'll probably go a little bit longer. So Ringling is about 70 a year with room and board, 1 year. Or is it 70K for the entire experience, which I'm assuming it's not. I'm assuming it's 1 year as a tuition. So Art Center right now, Art Center is it's a term system. So they have 3 terms in 1 year. Each term is 14 weeks. Each term costs about $23,000 tuition. So in a year, if you go straight from spring, summer, and fall, you're looking at about 60 to 70K also. But that's only tuition. It's not including room and board. There is no room and board. So there is no. So you have to find an apartment. You got to either room with somebody. So then you're paying the extra living costs of the rent, and then of course food, materials, all those things. So per year it can be quite up there. By the way, I am not saying that people should not be attending universities and schools. That's your choice. Okay. I have my own opinions about things, but there are many artists that will tell you do not attend colleges and universities. I think that's irresponsible. I think you should find out on your own. Okay. Now, if that means, well, I don't want to spend that kind of money, then don't. You make the choice to do so. Then you think, well, I need the advice. Understandable. But these people are not really giving advice. They're telling you why they think you shouldn't go because they did. You know? So because they went, they said my experience was terrible, or because going online, the education is similar to what I paid for. You shouldn't attend these schools, but they went, so they have a frame of context. They have an opinion to make on that. But to tell people not to do so, I don't think is very responsible because you're negating certain experiences that people should be going through to some degree. Let's say you go to a college. I didn't say it to finish because a degree in our field doesn't mean anything. Maybe you only go half a year. Maybe you don't spend $200,000 on education. Maybe you spend a bit of it, right? Well, that's still a lot of money, yes. But as you attend it, you now have an opinion on it, right? So instead of just blindly doing what other artists are telling you to do as professionals, saying, hey, don't go to the college, saying, oh, I shouldn't go because that person said it, I think is being a sheep, honestly. That's why I'm saying most of my stuff is an opinion and just an advice. I would never tell people they have to do these certain things. So I would never tell somebody they shouldn't go to college or art academy, art university. Now I would recommend certain ones that are out there, and there are ways in how which you can incorporate that in a more, I guess, beneficial way. But you should never negate yourself and have experience of some type. Because for me, my experience of going to a college was extremely beneficial. I was certainly done. I don't regret it, and nor would I ever change it. Question is, would I do it today? Yes, I would. I wouldn't go through the entirety of it. I would definitely do a portion of it. In terms of how I use that is different. Especially if you're talking about if I had the same kind of experience that as I went through as a student there. I, absolutely, I would definitely do it again. I would not be where I am now without that experience. That I now know, having gone through it. Better to have to pay that than not having done it and not know, and have that question always in my mind. Could it have been a good thing for me? Could I have taken some advantage of it? Right. But I also do understand it's not an easy choice. It is vastly expensive. For myself, I had to like take loans and all that kind of stuff. My parents had to help me as well too. Um, and from there, I had to pay my student loans off for years and years and years. You know, yeah, community colleges are great. There's certain ones that can offer a good education, um, but the instructors may not be professional quality. But it depends on the school. Internationally, it's a little bit different because a lot of international places, like in Europe, tuition is free. You know, however, there's not as many opportunities and diversity of opportunities internationally compared to that in the U.S. The education will still be good internationally. It's just that you don't have a lot of options sometimes, like that are very specifically training to a certain thing. But it's changing. So places in different parts of Europe and parts of Asia and whatnot, there are schools that are popping up that are becoming a lot stronger. And so I would say maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, U.S. will not be the hotbed. I mean, it really isn't now. When it comes to things like entertainment world and making games and movies, the U.S. is not really the main place anymore. Um, Especially in games. Games are being made in international all over the world by many countries and studios, equally as good as any other studio out there. So, but in terms of the world of education, it's a little bit harder to find that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that why would anybody international wouldn't pay for that, right? Especially if it's like kind of specialized. Specialized stuff isn't. It may not be supported by the government. Who knows? Like in Denmark, I go to a school out there once in a while, and I would do workshops called the Animation Workshop in Viborg, Denmark. I've been there twice, and that school is unique in terms of how they do the educational process because they usually bring in international artists to be the instructors, almost like that was why they call it Animation Workshop. It's all workshop-based education, but you're actually getting a degree in the thing, and I think they have to pay for it. I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact details about their programs, but I just know how the school works in terms of education of who they bring in for instructors. I just thought it was an interesting experience. That's all I'm saying. Well, there you go. Daylan's saying that it wasn't worth it for you because the school wasn't taking it very seriously. In that situation again, that as soon as you came across that, I mean, you would leave because if you felt that, you saw it, and it wasn't uh, being supportive in that way, then it's a clear sign that this is not a place I'm going to go to nor spend more money on. So if I spent maybe 1 or 2 terms there or semesters, I would have left. Most times they reach out to me in terms of if schools reach out or not. If I don't reach out to them. They contact me for like workshops and stuff like that. One of the best schools at the moment that works within entertainment work is actually in Australia, CDW in Adelaide. It's a really cool school. I've also been out there a couple times and did a couple workshops here and there. One online, one in person, and run by really good people. And they're now accredited. and they have a lot of international people that go there. CDW, the Concept Design Workshop in Australia. It's my favorite comic of all time. It's a hard one. Like it's asking like, what's your favorite movie? You know, there's so many variants of different types I like because of certain reasons. But is there one as at the apex of all of that? Not again, not really. I don't. I can't think of one that will be the favorite of all time. Can I make a general list, or I guess one off of that list that would be at that grouping? One will be Meta Barons, uh, illustrated by Juan Jimenez, written by Alejandro Jodorowsky. It's an amazing book, amazing graphic novel, one that has to be read if you're interested in the world of storytelling. It's crazy. Meta Barons. All right, let me zoom out a bit more now. Well, you have to talk to them. I'm not sure if you go to a college or a high school, they may not have a budget, for inviting artists and guests and stuff like that to come in and do workshops. I have spoken at high schools, I have spoken at colleges, I've spoken at companies, I've done workshops for all. And usually, again, they're finding me out. But they have to have the department and the money for it, essentially. Meta Barons, yes. But in those situations where they're reaching out to me, in some occasions, yes, some of the students in there were requesting someone like me or some other artists. Before the 2020 year and when everything shut down, I was in line to visit a lot of places. I was supposed to go to Illinois for a domestic workshop. I was supposed to go to a lot of international ones. Back in Austria, I was supposed to go to Denmark again. Supposed to go back to Australia again. Supposed to go back to Paris. Supposed to go to where else was it? Rome. I was supposed to go back to Rome. There's a school out there called Idea Academy in Rome, Italy. Amazing school. But that was all 2020, and then all got canceled. But in light of that, it forced a lot of us to turn online. So without that, I would never be doing this. The whole Twitch and live stream and that kind of stuff. So there's always a silver lining. Do I like the cyberpunk genre? Absolutely. A lot of fun. Blade Runner is a really big aspect of that. But for me, like it starts off with a lot of mangas. So the Shiro work, like Ghost in the Shell, is a big aspect of where cyberpunk for me was a huge gain. I'm going to start to get into a bit more hatching now. The concentration of dark and light is going to be here. As I work a way out of this, I'm going to begin to hatch, 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 hatch. So there's going to be a darker concentration, or more of a contrast area, and it starts to get lighter and contrast out this side. Question earlier was, do people normally go into concept art first before illustration? And really, it's more the other way around. I was illustration at Art Center that worked in this subset of concept design. So illustration, think of that as more the generality, because illustration covers many different parts of, let's say, the world of art. Where concept art field is more specific within the entertainment industry. This is a long question, but you're a self-taught sketchbook artist, and I don't study anything related with art. A teacher of yours um, they want to do an art exhibition, and she wants me or wants you to be the star, quote unquote. Any advices, sizes, prints, or originals, ink, watercolors, me. Well, the question is this your first time doing exhibition in the show with somebody? And if it is, that's your choice as to like what medium you should use. And if you're saying I like ink and watercolor, stick with that. What sizes? What size do you normally work at? Should I do prints? Sure, why not? If you can afford it. Um, what theme? Based on things you've already kind of done in the past couple of years. So if it's the first show, collect the things you already had in the last year, use that as a basis, and build more work towards it, right? So instead of like creating a whole new collection of work, which you can do, you can also say, well, I have a year's worth of content, and I'm going to handpick the ones that are very relatable. Let's say, as an example, it's a theme on animals, and I have a collection of paintings and illustrations, and ink and watercolor of different kind of animals that I like. Great. So let's say you chose like 10 pieces out of that year. Well, I want this to be like a 20 piece, 30-piece show. So then you add the additional 10 that are originals for the show specifically. But at least you don't have to do an additional 10 from before. So you use the older work that's not super old, just in the last year, to help you initially get that ball rolling, and you pad it with the additional stuff you can do now. Now, it also depends on deadline. If this exhibition is like next month, you might not be able to do that, right? So let's say you handpick more out of the year's worth of work, and you'll do like maybe 10, but not a whole full watercolor collection. Maybe 5 of them will be watercolor, 5 of them will be just ink only. It might be more manageable, right? So within that size and dimension, you can keep it consistent, or if you only have one size, that's great too. You got to frame everything if you're working with the exhibition, so it's going to cost you some money. Putting an exhibition up in a gallery show costs you money. Keep that in mind. You will lose more money than really make, if anything else. Because will the piece sell? Maybe, maybe not. Will you make the money back as to what you spend? What am I spending on? Frames. You're responsible for buying that, right? Prints. If you're gonna make prints, you got to pay for it. Whatever other means of like transporting stuff, right? Maybe you got to ship it. It's all up to you. So of course, as the exhibition or the gallery, if it's a gallery, puts it up there, they take a percentage of what you sell. So let's say you sold a piece, like a watercolor piece like this, which is about maybe 8.5 by 11, and you sold it for like $300. Well, then they'll take 50% of that. But then also include your expenses, and what you actually make from it might be negative, or maybe a little bit of profit. But that's if you sell, right? So gallery work is not easy. It's not lucrative, and it can be if you became super famous, but that requires time and a chance of something. Now, of course, how do I know this? Is because I've done many exhibitions and shows. I did a solo show last year at the end of December in Virginia. I've done many group shows. I've done another solo show from years ago. So, question here is, am I still going to do physical workshops, maybe even in Austria sometime? Or should I enroll online instead? So no plans yet for Austria. I know that in Austria, another instructor, Will Weston, was invited. I wasn't really interested in doing any sort of international workshop this year just yet. THU, the Trojan Horse one, might be the first one, possibly. Like I said, it's tentative. Trojan Horse's unicorn is in Portugal, in Malta. So I was asked by the Super Running crew if I would want to go out to that, and they said they would send me out there. But I haven't made the decision because the problem is scheduling. Earlier today, I was trying to figure out my calendar, schedule stuff, because there's just so much thing going on. It might be too soon for international for me just yet. Maybe next year is when I'll start up a lot of international stuff. But this year's a lot of conventions and shows here domestically in the U.S., East Coast to West Coast. New York, shoot, I forgot about that show. New York Comic Con, I forgot to put that in my calendar. Dang it, that's gonna put a monkey wrench in my schedule. But New York Comic Con is supposed to be at as well too, and I think that's in, oh god, it's in October, isn't it? Yeah. So if it's a school university thing, Surpresa, then again, you might still sell stuff. You still have to frame it, I believe. The school might take a cut. They may not. I don't know if you're even allowed to sell it, honestly. But yeah, in terms of back to your question about the workshops internationally or not, I will be doing some physical workshops here in the States, one or two here in LA based things. But internationally right now, THU in Malta might be the only one, possibly. But hopefully next year I'll be in Austria because I'll reach out to Sylvia, and I know that she's trying to get things back going again. If the one with Will does well, I may in consideration to come next time, which I'm sure it will. It's like I'm sure people are really amped to get out and do workshops for art. I think this kind of stuff that we have interest within the creative field, doesn't get hampered by a lot of stuff that's going on today in our world. If anything else, it heightens it. It just makes us realize how much more we want to really do that. Uh, so of course it doesn't really diminish. We you can't stop this sense of feeling of wanting to draw and paint and create, especially if you're interested in love with it to that degree. So I hope that you guys are able to be out there to keep encouraging and supporting communities, being a part of events, because that itself is going to help this whole thing going with the same level of energy. Like I was even concerned about like my online classes. With the stuff that's going on right now, it's like, are people even going to be interested in even taking classes right now? And I always have that little bit of self doubt because you can't predict it. You don't know exactly how people are going to respond. You can only hope by just putting it out there that people are interested in having that opportunity. Um, but that's just self thinking and brain just telling you all this, internally. But the thing is, I've had that thought every single session, and every single session is fine. you know. But we'll see. This is where his head's gonna be cut off in here. We'll make that dark as well. Bits of like flesh and meat. That's the only last place with high contrast. Everything else around it, just basic hatching. No problem. I appreciate you guys staying up. And thanks for all the interesting and good questions. The questions like this, are the benefit for everyone. There are varying degrees of experiences of people in here. Everyone, I'm sure, is interested in the world of art to some degree. And because of the fact that these questions, some of them can be the more basic level, and also some that are more advanced, it's welcome, all of it, because of the diversity of individuals that are here. It's important that we touch upon all those kind of gamuts. This is not a class, but this is definitely a Q&A to kind of like interact with you guys more. I've never done anything on the Magic card before, but I have worked with a company that does the Magic cards. Wizards of the Coast is a company name. Years ago, many, many years ago, I did a freelance job with them doing design work for creatures for a role playing book. It was all drawings and sketches, but I had to design the creatures and stuff for it. It was a lot of fun. I'm not really a painter, so I paint stuff professionally for work wise, but illustration kind of painting is not what I really do. So that field wouldn't really interest me that much. But I don't know. It'd be fun maybe to like collaborate. Maybe an artist that really is in that world of developing Magic cards and collaborating with them, like sketching something out. Like my friend Izzy actually does a lot of that. He works for Magic, and he's been doing that for years. I should reach out to him and find out. Doing a collaborative piece for a Magic card. It's all light hatching now at this point. A little bit of fills here and there. The thing about this is that I have to be very careful of how much I do and things I don't do. This is the thing about drawing and sketching. For me, at the level that I'm trying to get towards next, is about being able to control this part about how much of it I invest in and what I don't touch. And for me, I think the skill on the quality of mastership that I've seen many other artists do in the past, today, is their ability on making decisions either by innate feeling or by conscious choice of what they draw and don't draw. And it's really hard to do that because I tend to overdraw, right? That's a commonality for most people. We tend to overdo things. We over detail it, we over render it, we overwork it. So trying to release that overworking feeling is something I'm trying to always work on myself. So the question is, how many hours practicing studying painting per week do you recommend while learning to draw? I'm trying to find balance. And really, there is no answer for that one, in that particular question, because you have to find that balance yourself. As you're saying, you're trying to find it. And really, only you can find that. I can give you an advice by saying, oh, maybe like break it up into days of like this many hours of this and this many of that. But the problem is, I don't know all the nuances about your daily life. Do you work work full time? Do you work part time? Do you have a family? Do you also take classes? And you know, what is it even trying to do? So there's so many layers to that question that I can't really give you a real answer. All I can say is balance is key, and I certainly wouldn't partition it to be one or the other. Drawing and painting go together, as many things we've discussed today, from references to subject matter to then also our practice on different mediums. So drawing and painting go together because the drawing gives you structure, proportions, composition. The painting gives you volume, light, and then color, right? So you got to bring them together. The idea is, how do I incorporate what I'm learning in that current moment into the next thing I'm trying to do? So should I draw first and then paint? Sure, but you can also be painting while you're drawing. So if I'm going to paint study, you should also be drawing and sketching on the side. If I'm trying to paint stuff, but I should still be drawing on the side also. You got to do both. But is there like an actual solid number per day in which I should maybe split that towards? It should be adaptable. Some days you want to do more painting, so you do a little bit less drawing. Some days you want to draw more. Some days you don't want to work at all. And it's more just about looking at stuff, researching, visualizing, right? Some days it's only sketching, but then you go back and forth. So a lot of it is also then gut feeling. What do you feel and what do you want? And then, of course, what I said earlier is not to feel guilty on things that you feel like you want to do. Sorry, I'm going to go back to this real quickly. It's about 6:30 my time right now. Thankfully, it's not too late. We still have sunlight outside. That's the nice thing about the daytime time shift. As it gets later, sun is still out. It's not pitch black right now. Um, so I'll probably go maybe another half an hour or so. So if anybody has any continued questions, you're welcome to ask. But this will end at some point. Next time I go on, I'm trying to plan. I said this last time, but I am trying to plan for next week. And the reason why, of course, is because of the fact that I'm on break right now. So my classes are all ending, which gives me the free time to stream. So I'm hoping next week I'll be back on. If not, even sooner, maybe even this week again, because my class registration is on Friday. So I might jump back on to help promote. You're thinking of picking up drawing. Where do you start? Just draw? Yeah, like right now. If you're interested in thinking of drawing again, right now should be the time. You're well, again, I don't know obviously your circumstances. You could be at home on your couch, on your phone, on a computer watching this. And in that moment, you could also say, let's just bring out a sketchbook as I'm watching, listening. Let's just sketch whatever you want. Because if you're just picking it back up, this side of being able to jump back into the play side is important. Why do we play? Because we want to understand. We want to become familiar. We want to be able to actually to enjoy things that we do. So don't make it so official. Don't give it so much pressure. And even right now, there shouldn't be any because you can just be drawing with me for fun, and that's all it is. So it doesn't really matter what it turns out like. Oh, it's not that great. Well, it doesn't matter. Next time, do another one, right? So even right now, you could be picking up that drawing tool set. Now, if you're not drawing right now because, well, I'm with family or I'm working or this isn't this, understandable. But after all that, maybe later tonight, even for like 15 minutes, you'll have a sketchbook, open it up, and draw what you want to draw. Oh, I like animals, or I like people. I like drawing cars. I like drawing weapons. I want to draw this character. Draw it just for 15, 20 minutes. Tablets are fine. Use Procreate. Use the iPad. Those are excellent to draw with as well. Lightweight, low cost. Even though it sounds expensive for the iPad, but it's a lower cost than buying the whole computer than getting Adobe Photoshop suites and stuff like that. It's a lot more money to spend. So iPad is an excellent tool set for even just people that are beginning. Introduces digital, still uses very lot of analog techniques. Do you think there are more effective practices than others? Maybe, but I think that's also based on the eye of the beholder. Someone who's actually going through themselves probably have their own opinions of which effect of the practices were better than others, right? So it's just an advice. But do I think, in my opinion, there are some better techniques than other ones? I don't know every single one of them, so I can't give you a proper opinion about all of them. So you might have to be specific as to like which ones you're talking about. And even then, if you labeled them, I might not know them because I don't know everything. Which qualities should a good learner have, whether self-taught or attending classes? Um, so it's a very loaded question, and I could spend a very long time talking about this. Okay, uh, so it's a good question. It is this sense of like what a learner should have as a quality going and attending classes, right? Whether they're being self-taught or attending a class, what quality? This, of course, I can think of so many, but I'm trying to whittle it down to something that can maybe focus on. It's not talent, it's not skill, it's not the materials, it's not money. You know, of course, we need the money to have the opportunity, so you need just enough, right? Just enough. But from there, is it your age? No. No. Is it where you were from? No, of course not. Yeah. Is it your ethnicity? No. Is it your gender? Absolutely not. None of those things matter. Okay. What matters is that if you begin to go in that route and you go through the self-taught or attend the class, the quality that you should be able to have or build is the commitment. I don't know what's the right quality. Not commitment. I'm trying to find the right word that applies to this function. Consistency, maybe? No. That is important, but that's not the word I'm thinking of. So basically, what it is functionally is about being able to see it to the end, right? Being able to understand that when you take something of a role of a student, persistence, that's a good one. Persistence is going to give you the action of being able to start and then see it to the end. See it to the end. Even if you do terribly, even if you fail at it, but you're there every day. I didn't get the homework done, and you still showed up, right? My quality is terrible. I didn't want to share it with you, but I'm still here. That to me is far more important because you can have discipline is built over time, you know? But I think the persistence is really the key thing. Those are all important, by the way, and they're accrued as you mature. But you got to have that hunger. Completionism. It's another interesting word, too. And this is one of the big advices I give to young people. Whatever you begin, you see it to its end, to the point in which you can have an opinion to it. Now, what that end is, it varies. Like, for example, school of colleges. We talked about that. Should I then go to this college and then finish it all the way to the degree? And I said you didn't have to. Go to the length in which you can understand that this is as much I could take from it. There's nothing else. This is not even going the same direction. You found that point and you end. You move on, right? So I think that's the part in which you should hold on to. As a quality, as a aspect of you coming into an art class of any type that you show in and you're still going to feel very not resistant but definitely hesitant, a bit fearful, unsure, doubtful, right? Open, I'm sure, to receive, but still very yeah, unsure of things. So because of that, it can very much put people out of the trail that they're on, and they'll easily fall, of course. And because they're unwilling to get up because it's just too hard or it's not for them, or if they feel like I feel like I'm letting you down, or I'm letting myself down, I'm letting other people down. And you start to feel guilty about that, that you step out of it. So always showing up to the class, no matter what, and seeing it to the end. This is what I used to tell my classes at Art Center. I've been teaching, I taught at Art Center for 10 years, the college here in Pasadena, and I went to that school obviously, and then I started teaching there after my mentor passed. Eventually, as I started to get a really good sense of confidence of how I wanted to instruct a course, usually what I told people in the very beginning, these are the things I would normally say. The things I would say were, if you're going to come into this class, obviously, no matter how you feel, please show up, right? No matter where you're at in terms of your work, in terms of how you feel, in terms of what it is, because we can talk about it then. If you're here, we can talk about it. If you're not here, all I can do is assume, and I can assume the wrong things. So that gives me a negative light potentially on certain actions, which may not be the case of your intention. So showing up is really the big thing. Because if you can do this at the educational level, what's important on the working professional level is to show up to jobs, right? Be there on time, and do your work. The other part was adaptability. The other quality is adaptability. So how well you adapt to the situation of stress, or timing, scheduling, the work, the adaptation to skills, style sets, techniques, and methods. And the adaptation has grown over time, right? It's not learned immediately, nor you might not even have it in the very start of it. But that is something that you should build towards as well. And of course, understanding the fact that you are not perfect, as I am not, and no one here is, and you can make mistakes. But that's education also. Is that I'm going to be persistent and I'm going to show up, but sometimes you may not, because we can make a mistake, and you don't have to feel guilty about that. The idea is that hopefully you be capable enough to reach out and explain, the things that are going on. And today, in this day and age, people are much more aware of, the whole mental health thing and physical health stuff and the current situations of the world and how it can be very, stressful for individuals. And, we have to be very mindful of others today, much more to that degree, um, because it's important. So having the opportunity to explain where you're coming from, is now more there. We're in the past. If you didn't show up, you're not really given a second chance a lot of times, So the harsh reality of things, I hope is never completely disregarded or discarded. That is, you have to obviously go through certain struggles, pains within the educational program. You got to learn lessons, right? But they should never be abusive, of course. And that's something that has to be tended to, of course, within the world. I've seen many examples of that kind of stuff. You're like, ooh, that was bad. Where you could just see it in someone's face. It was just traumatic. Whether it was like a certain feedback or critique, and they were torn apart. People not given chances, not being able to explain themselves, how they feel about it was not legitimate. Wasn't valid, so they discarded. Yeah. Have I personally gone through it myself? Not to the degree of that level, but there's definite difficulties, and denials and stuff. Things like didn't get, and I learned, So that kind of difficulty of, it's not the same level of many other people, but you see it around you, and I will say that I think it's a formative part of people, but the balance is important, right? You can't just give everybody an A, so especially in a school like Art Center where I'm grading individuals, and I failed many. I have failed students because they didn't show up, because they didn't do the work, because they didn't finish their finals. I would fail them, and they can say what they want, but there are also the curriculum laws in the class and what you need to be able to do requirement wise. I can't change that. So you accept it, learn, try again. It always surprises me, especially when it comes to a school like that, any sort of university where somebody would fail a class, unless there was an actual reason like a health issue, personal issue, family issue, that kind of thing. But someone who just wasn't committed to the work, you know, it always shocks me. It's like, hey, you're paying this much to come here, and you're not, doing your job. you know, I can understand it's difficult. I understand you may not do it very well. Maybe there's some other things are prioritized. So what you hand in may not be the best of quality, but at least you're still on it. You care. But I've had some students that will coast through. And they would just kind of show up day to day and it's like, yeah, here's what I'm doing. They, that's it. And it's like, don't get that kind of attitude. I don't understand that kind of mindset. Um, Especially in a class like mine where you sign up for it. It's not part of the curriculum. It's not part of the core, things. So people wouldn't take the class because they want to take the class. And my class wasn't easy. It was hours of work. So someone to just come in there and be like, basic level. Okay. Well, usually, what I don't really, they're all adults, so I'm not there to like reprimand or to like yell at them, that kind of thing. I would never do that. But really, the key thing is the more you invest, the more I give back. And if someone there is not really giving into it, it's like, okay, cool, nice job, do that, move forward. So there really isn't that much investment at that point. So It's really on them at that, junction. Had that happen a couple of occasions. Thankfully, not a lot, but enough to recognize, those kind of individuals. Self-teaching an art community online has helped you so much. Good. I'm glad to hear that. It's been a big basis of what my online classes are like. I have an online Discord community for my classes, my students, not public. So if you sign up for the class, you're invited to it, but there's hundreds of people in there. And it's a perpetually growing community Discord. So the problem with many of the schools, like Brainstorm or CDA, is that they would have a Discord community for that class, but there are individual Discord channels for that one class. So if there's like 20 people in the class, 20 people are in that Discord, and then when the class is done, it basically dies. No one's active on it anymore. So the one I run, the Discord that I run is core for the class of dynamic sketching, and it builds. So the current students are brought into that same Discord with the other hundreds of students that were from the past, and so they can share their current homework and get feedback from other people. The lectures and demos are private to the current class, so others can't see it. Only they can because they paid for that. But all the other content is available to them. Yeah, Art Center is primarily known for its transportation program. It's one of the most widely celebrated departments in the school. It's not the biggest, but definitely a lot of professional field people that work in transportation design are coming from Art Center, and they're very disciplined. I came from the illustrations track, and this is back. I started Art Center in 2001. I was there for about 3.5 years, so I graduated in 2004. And around that time, illustration was very general. There were no actual tracks under illustration, like entertainment design or whatever the case is. We just basically just uh, customized our classes and chose what filled the best credits that hopefully fit with our interests in a career. So it was very kind of wild west for us back then. We just had to find it by doing it or word of mouth. But today we have all the lesson tracks of the classes you should take lesson after lesson, which is good and bad, in its own. So I guess for those of you that are kind of interested in my classes in the future, the way these live streams are run, it's kind of similar of how my classes are. They run for several hours, and I would obviously do demos, digital or on paper at times, and I answer questions, and then we do feedback reviews at the end of it. But then of course I give you homework, so you get to work on that. Okay, let's start to move around a little bit more in some of the areas. Again, I'm going to start to get into some of the halftones in here, some of the mid values, filling these in. Trying to be very decisive about my hatching directions. A lot of times I move with the form. A lot of times I move with the material. Other times it's just based on gut instinct, how I want to move the line around. And of course, inspiration from other artists. As you analyze other artists and see how they do line work, you pull from that inspiration. For me, a lot of it is like Mobius, guys like Tarada do amazing hatch work. Franklin Booth, we talked a lot about this in class the other day. Um, Charles Dana Gibson to Joseph Clement Cole, Heinrich Clay, Sergio Topi, Claire Wendling is an amazing draftsman. Tara Whitlatch, she's awesome as well too. So at first I started off very loose, chunky, you know, kind of rough, general shapes, loose constructions. As we begin to kind of tighten things up, it all kind of comes together. Question here is I'm trying to sort through some of the questions. Have you ever had students who signed up for your class and didn't do the homework, kind of sketching? Yes, but because of legitimate reasons. Either because of health, because their job took priority. So they would start by doing the work, but they got really busy. But they would still be there in the class a lot of times. Some of them would even drop out. But that's that's their choice. And again, in the online approach is different because in the online classes, I can't expect the same thing from the art center people. And there is a difference there because in art center, those students are going through multiple classes and terms before they come to me. A lot of them will be a year in there already. So in a year and a half at art center, it should give them enough basic discipline coming to my class. But online, we have all walks of life. People that are older and younger and no experience and more experience. So I can't say that, hey, if you don't do the work, why aren't you matching up to what everyone else is doing? It's not fair because again, some people are just starting and they're overwhelmed. So I had to give them that chance on being able to adapt and feel things out because it's not graded. There's no grade here. This is a school based on building skill and building fundamentals and foundations. So that if you want to go to maybe building more of a educational foundations towards some advanced things, you could do so. Or if you want to go to an actual school after that, which I've had many people do in the past as well. They would take a class like mine, build a proper portfolio to actually apply for universities. I've had numerous students going to places like Art Center or other schools after online classes. Because a lot of them will be like in high school, or a lot of them will be younger, or changing their career completely. People will have their jobs for like 5, 10 years and doing something else, and they will quit that job because they always wanted to do art. I've had that happen many occasions. Okay, let's keep working around some of the area down into the creature's head now. This is the underside of the boot. And this is that grotesque creature's skin now folded over, wrinkling. It's got this weird tongue coming out of him. As I said, I'm going to use hatching mostly to kind of fill shadow shape areas. The pen I'm using right now is the Esterbrook fountain pen I used earlier. My Nakaya fountain pen. The ink that I'm using right now is the Sailor Pigment ink. These are the only pens I've been using so far. You're working as a lawyer right now and hope to be an illustrator one day. I hope so too. Good luck on that. I just hope it's not too late for your brain to keep up with the learning. Well, if you really truly enjoy it and love it, you'll make it work. To what level that will get to, there's no guarantee nor surety to it, but that shouldn't matter. It's more about what you do presently. Nakaya, Nakaya, but it's a very expensive fountain pen from Japan. That brand specifically. I wouldn't recommend it because of its cost. What I would recommend to start with, actually, this Esterbrook is pretty good. This is from it's a U.S. based company, Ester Brook Brook. This pen was about 120, which is I know it sounds expensive, but there are many other fountain pens that I have. Like this Pilot was about 300 400. The Nakaya was like 800. This Esterbrook is about 120. You can go cheaper, got down to like somebody asked about the parallel pen, which is pretty good. Things like the Lamy Safari pens are like $35. There's the Pilot desktop pen. No, not Pilot, Platinum desktop pen, which is like $8, which is a good fountain pen also too. The Muji pen's pretty good. That's a gel pen. They're super smooth. They're cheap, like $1.99. Um, I like them. I've used them quite a bit, but they're not water resistant. So if I choose to apply watercolor here, I can apply watercolor to this ink because it's pigment based. But the gel pen is not. So that's why I don't use those all the time. But the Muji pens are really good because they draw so smooth. Am I using a flexible nib? The fountain pen is this one here. The Pilot one is flexible. This one's been shaped, grinded, so it gives me a certain line. You just learned that you can make a parallel pen out of a soda can. I had no idea. I'm sure you can make a pen out of many things. I made a pen out of a vulture feather, like a quill, like an old timey. I found the feather, a primary feather in Africa. We were taking a break and having lunch, and I stepped out of the truck, and there was a giant feather, like it was huge, like this long, and longer than that. But I took it back to the camp and I shaped the end of the nib of it with my knife, and I was able to make a little nib and I drew with it. An actual feather pen. Sorry, just gonna get my headway into this as we get wrapped up here. We're at about 2 hours and 46 minutes, so we're just gonna finish up in the last moments. The collection of heads down here, I'll kind of push on. Let me bring it down a little bit here so you can see more parts of the image. For a budget pocket fountain pen, you love the TWSBI's Eco. That's that Taiwanese brand, I think, and they're pretty good. Yeah, right. The platinum carbon ink is what I also like to use too. But this one is Sailor. I'm playing with. I only found this a month ago, and it's pretty good. It works a little bit better than the platinum carbon, based on the fact that there's a little bit more more viscosity to it. The pigment, the platinum carbon ink is thicker. It's really thick, so it can really be slow in terms of the way it flows out of the pen. So that one's a bit more watery, but it's still pigment heavy. It's not as strong as the platinum, which I really love still. I love that ink a lot, but I wanted to just test this one out. Do I ever use dip pens? I do once in a while. I think I have mine somewhere here. I thought I had some. No, it's one of my other packs. But yeah, I do have dip pens. I don't use them very often. I stick to fountain pens most of the time. And I'll carry multiple fountain pens because obviously they only hold so much ink. So I'll carry like 2 or 3 in my pocket at a time. Um, and I carry my sketchbook around, so if I go somewhere, I'll have one pen. If it doesn't work very well, I'll switch to the other one. Or if one's out of ink, yeah, I go to the other one again. I rarely fill on location, so I fill them up prior. Have multiple pens I can use. For those of you joining right now, this piece was inspired by the recent Elden Ring game. I've been playing it in the last several number of days. It's been a fun game, and I've never really been into the world of the Souls game, um, but it's I think a really good entryway for a lot of people who are not familiar to that world. I've been enjoying it. It's been great. Hard, but hard for a reason. So of course, playing that game, the fantasy elements are very much permeating my brain right now. It has a hold on some, yeah. A client failed to show up in court because I was playing the game. It's funny. Yeah, that game definitely is not one where you can just pick up and play for a number of days to finish a story and move on. There's so much to unpack in it. Um, it's something you can be stuck with for a very long time. Before that, when I finished Horizon Forbidden West on the PS5, and I thought that game was beautiful. It was a lot of fun to play, but it has a storyline of beginning to end. And when it ends, you can explore the world, but there's only so much more you can do. There's a lot of little side quests here and there, um, but yeah, I moved on from it. With the level of like intricacy and small details that Elden Ring has, is definitely a lot more crazier. A lot of them are just kind of nonsensical and don't really reward you with a lot of crazy stuff, or if it does, it's not something you get early on. But I think people like the aspect of the challenge, right? To look for it, find it. Have you ever played World of Warcraft? I have not actually. No. The MMORPG world is something I've actually never really gone into. Thankfully, I've always been more into story-based games, single player action. Really, I'm not really big into the multiplayer stuff. And even though Elden Ring has an aspect of it, it's not really multiplayer kind of stuff. I really enjoy world-based games, but I play a lot of different things. To fill my time in between Horizon, I was playing Gran Turismo 7, which has been really fun. I enjoyed quite a bit. I tried Valhalla, the Viking, the Assassin's Creed, which was okay, but it kind of bored me, honestly, because it plays like every other Assassin's Creed game I ever played. And I do like sports games quite a bit, so I chose the Confessor. I think it's more of a basic class that balances both physical and magic. Um, I started the game with what was it? What was that first profile? Is it Vagabond or something like that? But I lost a profile. I lost a save because it wasn't fully updated, and then my PS5 crashed and it lost my save. But thankfully, I wasn't very deep in, so I didn't mind starting over. I'm assuming there's a lot of people playing it on Twitch and streaming live plays. I don't watch a lot of Twitch myself. Even this kind of world of what art within Twitch, I don't know if it's really fully taken hold. I'm sure it has, but in terms of the amount of content on there, but in terms of people that I know, my friends and stuff like this, not a lot of them are really doing a lot of Twitch streams, even if they were really heavily into the online streaming kind of stuff. Um, I just don't know if this is a strong place to stay, honestly. I don't mind it because I'm not really looking at Twitch. I'm just using OBS to stream on it. We are down to the last bits and pieces here. So down here, just a bit more faces. Just almost like shadows of detail. Molded together, all blended, amorphous. We're staying pretty consistent though in terms of viewers. I had about 140 people in here, which surprised me. I actually thought we would only have like maybe 60 or 80 people, which is kind of the average, which is good. Again, I always say this. I like keeping it smaller. Gives you guys a better chance to chat and speak. We'll start to kind of break up the hatch work a little bit now. I kind of moved in one direction here with the hatching, and I'll start to kind of alter it by adding a couple little pock marks or textural details, roughness, and just changes of volume within the smaller elements. So by changing the direction of the hatching, I can diversify that information as well too. Is your CGMA course helpful for sculptors, you think? Well, the CGMA course that I have is only the mentorship. I don't actually teach under CGMA anymore in terms of a class of dynamic sketching. It's only the mentorship program. So it's only like maybe 5 to 10 people in that class or course, basically. It's a way to coach people and to direct them on basic things. But in terms of the sketching class that I have, would it help sculptors? Yeah, absolutely. I believe this is a handmade paper. It's very rough. You can see the fibers on it. This is a handmade for sure. Oh, absolutely. Artists are always creating. After this, I'll probably relax a little bit. Might go work out in my garage gym. I've been trying to get back into working out again. I haven't worked out since quarantine. I tried a little bit here and there, but in between those, but something would always kind of like get in the way. Class wise, I would just get busy or get tired or something like this, and it's really hard to like work out at home. I found. For me, from the times that I worked out heavily was during when I was working full time in studios, because I would then go directly to the gym instead of going home. But when you're already at home, you don't want to step out. Uh, so I'm trying to figure out a way to make a better balance because I need to get back into it. I've lost a lot of my physical strength because of this, and I don't like it. Appreciate that, Pinky Brown. Hope you come back next time as well too. And I'll always announce on my Instagram, on my stories when I'll be doing a live stream. Usually, I like to keep it within the mid afternoons to late hours. I know internationally makes it kind of hard because some people like international European wise, it's going to be like late at night right now. Or if I do it super late at night and like midnight, it's going to be like 9 a.m. for them. For Asia, and like I said, it's a whole other thing. But either way, I want to try to keep it within maybe this time frame, maybe a little bit earlier in the afternoon here in the West. That way, it might be like later at night, not super late at night in Europe. But yeah, we're actually almost done here. So last bits and pieces inside this blood now. We're kind of show a dark reflection. So we started this from scratch, some basic drawing. We spent about a couple of hours on this piece, but this is on top of the multiple questions and talking. So if we constrained, the action of it, something like this, like I said, probably would take me about an hour and a half to 2 hours to fully do, which is not short, but it's because also this is a full sketch illustration, not a study. Sorry if this was asked earlier, but how similar is the character development class to the character design thinking one you taught that previously? So the character design class will definitely go into more of the character development, not so much on like the primitives of shape language and proportions. A lot of that stuff I would want people to kind of have a relative understanding of. So this character design class is not intro. This is not an introduction character class, which I'm going to make very clear of in the description. That if someone is trying to learn character design from the very beginning, they probably don't want to take it because having a better sense of like how to draw the figure, being able to understand basic design elements would be something that I would recommend highly. Because here I would want to make sure people can explore the deeper sense of who the character is, being able to properly research it, making stronger decisions, and building a world around the character to establish it in a stronger sense of context. So from the costuming to the pose to the expressions to the acting, all that kind of stuff, I actually want to get into more. That would be the key differences. So we wouldn't be doing things like let's do shape exercises today, and let's do things like that kind of stuff. I want to do like story exercises, really. But we'll also be doing things like sketches and drawings and illustrations that also create images like this, um, and whatnot. So using the extent of your skill set, hopefully, and the class will be relatively smaller. Like 10 people or less, because I want it to be a more contained group that really pushes each other. And I'm sure this first one will be still a bit of a learning experience for me. So unfortunately, the people that take it the first time, not to say they'll have a bad experience. Usually, the first round is kind of a moment to like me to understand what needs to be adjusted. Still, I'm still going to put my all into it, but like any class, it can only be made better. Even the classes I'm teaching right now, with the classes I've taught for years, I'm always looking for a way to make as a better experience. These weapons and swords in the background will be kind of like loosely hatched in. Let's pull back a little bit. So I can see the extent of the full image. The tone book? Oh no, I'm still making it. Are you talking about the one with the guy traveling around and gathering biological data of the island he's on, or the other? I've actually have a couple tone books. There's one that's a black book that has all the gouache paintings in it. That's an older one. Um, but I'm assuming you're talking about the natural history book that I have. Oh yeah, that one. No, that tone book. Yeah, yeah. So I still have it. I haven't touched it in a while. It's because it requires such a specific material, so I have to really settle into it. But no, I still have it, and I would like to be able to work on it more. But that one's taken a bit of a backseat to my current natural book. The natural history book of the animals. So I'm gonna try to finish that one first this year. If I come back to that other tome, it's more of a personal thing. Would I ever actually make it into a book? I have no idea yet because there never really is a plan for that kind of stuff in the beginning. Many books that I create are usually start off by me just wanting to do it, and then from there, based on the level of interest, people will tell me if they're interested in having a book. But with that one right there, because it's still so early on, it was done so long ago, I don't know yet. But thanks for the interest. So I am surprising you guys even remember that. It's such an old book. Possibly from the class I was teaching because I showed it recently in a classroom. Yeah, that the imagination natural history book that I'm making right now is probably one of them I'm excited by. The Dynamic Bible Volume 2, I'm starting this month to next month. So I'm hoping to finish it so it's done by this year, which will be released early next year. The first Dynamic Bible I'm using to basically tour around because we didn't get to. When I made the first Dynamic Bible with Superani, we sold it online, but we never actually took it to shows. So we've actually never promoted it, you know? So that's why this year I asked him, like, do you want to release a second volume? Because I intended to. But let's saying, let's wait because we actually haven't taken around even the first book at all. So this year, going to like the Monster Palooza, Comic Con, San Diego, maybe Florida, Lightbox Expo, New York Comic Con. They want to have that book there with me, showing it. So I'll be finishing the volume 2 this year, and so we plan to release it for next year for volume 2. There'll be a total of potentially 5 volumes completely. So the intention is very strongly there to complete it. So I know people a lot of them asking still like, where can I even get the first one? Well, the first one's still sold out because a lot of the shipping issues, just trying to get the book around is impossible right now. Even the manufacturing, there's a paper shortage. So printing is impossible too. Um, But we have about 1,000 copies coming in to the US this coming month or two. I think maybe by June. I'm not sure, maybe. But there's 1,000 copies coming into the US for the shows. And they'll be supplying the online storefronts later this year as well, too. So for those of you that are still looking for the first book, if you're interested in it, it will be coming up on the Super Ronnie US website. But the second book will come next year for sure. That was fun to do. Definitely reminded me of the whole Berserk and Guts, the manga and all that such thing, which he's obviously influential to the world of Elden Ring a little bit there. You know what I really enjoy as a fantasy manga? Uh, it kind of turned into a weird thing later on, but I mentioned it in a class not too long ago, but it was Bastard. That was a really cool one. That was only translated in English for so many volumes, and it stopped. And I think he reached the ending of his series. It was like 26 or 27 books. But man, that art in that series, Bastard, is amazing. Appreciate that. Thank you. Have a all of you have a good night. For those of you that are leaving, we'll be ending here real soon. Just kind of tidying up a couple small spots here and there. I'll post this on my social media tonight. So if anybody wants to see this in closer details, you can head over there if you want to. I have not read that one before. Dorehidoro. I'll take a look at it. There's a lot I'm sure I've missed. Okay, I think we're good. I am not going to be adding watercolor to this. I want to keep it black and white. I like it as a drawing primarily. Put my name on there. Just to give you guys a quick up close preview. Let me actually, if I can just bring it up to the camera. I don't know if that'll work very well, but some of the details. There's the heads in there. Mutinous forms. This previous book itself is leather bound. It's got the other kind of stuff in here. This one I started beginning of this year. I got it in Utah at a kind of a craft store. They had this like handmade sketchbook. Normally, these kind of sketchbooks I can't stand because the quality is all over the place and the paper is normally really terrible. But this one, I looked through it, it's like I actually really like the paper. I was like, this is not bad actually. So I bought it just to test it out, and it actually works pretty well. So this was early February when I went to Utah to go see the Mustangs. I showed the sketchbook before online before. Um, there's another similar one. Yeah, there you go. You see the repetitions again? Repetitions are important. Man, this is a pretty good one. Feels nice. Rag paper, chews it up though, you know. So I have that much more to go. And like I was talking about this earlier, but this sketchbook is deceptive because it doesn't seem like that many more pages, but the pages are all like stuck together and they're really thin. So this is a lot of paper. So this sketchbook is gonna take me a year to fill up. I guarantee that. But I'm gonna try. I have a couple sketchbooks I'm trying to fill up. This one, the nature book, and I really want to start a couple other sketchbooks that I bought recently. So I have stacks of empty sketchbooks I want to start. But this one, hopefully, I'll get done by the end of the year. So will the other one, the natural history book, and that'll be that. Hopefully this year. I hope so. That's the idea, right? Trying to do as many streams as I can. Honestly, Pow Pow, I don't know where this sketchbook you can buy because I bought it at a local store in Utah where this book was probably made by somebody located in the community. So there was no name on it. There's no brand. There's no information about who made this. So that's obviously it's a handmade book, and they didn't incorporate any information, which is unfortunate. So I don't even know where this came from, honestly. So I can't recommend it. I'll try to find out the store name again in Utah. My friend took me there. Maybe they'll still have this book and sell it online. I don't know, but I'll reach out to them and find out what store it was, and I'll post it with this posting because everybody's been asking about the sketchbook. So I'll post it on my next post with this piece. I'll ask them which store it was. Yeah, making sketchbook is great. I've made paper before. It's difficult, but it's definitely fun. I'd rather just buy it. It does. You know, playing with paper is really fun. It's just like playing with pens. You know, the paper is just as important. And this one I've been enjoying quite a bit. I found this company who makes these really amazing sketchbooks. Let me see if I can find the name. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll grab it. Here, I'll show you what that sketchbook looks like. I'll be right back. Excuse me. Hold on. My cat. This one, the name's not even on the cover, comes in this crazy sleeve. This is actually one of the other one is the one I wanted to really work in. This is a specific kind of sketchbook, not a sketchbook. This is actually a scrapbook. Man, there's no name on it. What was the company name? I forgot it. But this is actually a photo album book. So it's got like tissue paper in between. This is like the tone book that I have that people are asking about with the black paper, but I found one with white paper. They made it. So they have a tissue paper in between this, and it's really thick board paper. Really thick. It's really nice. But this is a case bound book. Case bound. So super high quality. All leather. Super nice leather too. And it came in this like crazy soft velvety sleeve. So Epica, that's what it was. Epica, Epica. They're based in Italy. So it's an Italian company. And I bought this one in the used section. So they have a used section for sale of books that you're getting rid of. Some of the books are actually like damaged, so they have like a small scratch on the leather or something like that, and they sell at a discount. So I bought this one off of their sale side because they had a couple of scratches and stuff. And I bought a bigger one, a full book. And it's a handmade paper from Italy. Super nice, but I will say it's expensive. This is not for just the casual user. But it doesn't mean you can't try it. If you're able to afford it, you can definitely go for it. But for me, I'm going to spend on it because stuff like this I will definitely use and fill it up. So, anyways, Epica, Epica. All right. So I think that's about the end of our session today. Thank you again for everyone joining in, asking all the cool questions, hanging out for the first time in a long time. For those of you that are joining for the first time, please subscribe if you want to watch old streams. I will post this particular one in YouTube maybe in about a week or two, and you can watch it again at that point for those of you that are not a part of it. And I'll try to be on again maybe this coming week or next, which is going to help promote the classes and registration on Friday. For those of you that are interested in classes with me, you can ask questions about that next time, which will hopefully be coming up maybe this week or so. It might be even on Friday or, yeah, Friday most likely. But in any case, the class registration this Friday is on at noon. Okay, so I might have to do it sooner. Well, today's Wednesday already. Shoot. So tomorrow's Thursday. Maybe I'm just another one tomorrow. I don't know. If I do it tomorrow, I'll announce it. So follow my Instagram, Peterhanstyle, and I'll post up any other of the streams coming up, and we'll talk more. So thank you guys. Appreciate that. I will see you all next time.